likely to draw huge numbers from that group either. There are multiple considerations around having and raising children in the years after any state birth cash incentives have stopped. So general consistent measures that give a sense of security and stability are likely to be more effective. Returning record low fertility rates to their previous highs is quite the challenge. So perhaps the focus should move to stopping them from falling any further. This edition of The Inquiry was presented by me, Charmaine Cozier. The producer was Jill Collins, researcher Matt Toulson, editor Tara McDermott, and technical producer Nikki Edwards.
That was the BBC's The Inquiry. I'm Jeff Goods here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. You are listening to CBC 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Good morning, everybody. It is, as mentioned, 3 minutes to 6 a.m., and it is cold out there. I know, it's the most overused word in the world, but it's minus 23 in Winnipeg, so very cold. A high of minus 17 only today, but we do have lots of sunshine with a crisp day ahead. An extreme cold warning has been issued for up north. That's Thompson, Nelson, Splitland, Leaf Puck, Brochet, Tuduli, Gillam, and Shamattawa. So you're looking at overnight lows of minus 35 to minus 40, which is what you're waking up to this morning. So hopefully things will temper out by the end of the day. Welcome to Wednesday. Hello, Corey Funk. Corey Funk is directing the program this morning, and of course we'll be on the air covering the commute. Good morning, Abby Adeyemi, who's behind the controls of the show and covers weather on the program, and good morning to Brad Lillies, who's behind our YouTube channel. Heather Wells is in this morning also, and she's here with headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Animal rights groups have been given a rare authorization for a private prosecution in a live horse export case. Horses from the Swan River area from a farm there were bound for Japan and human consumption. And we're going to hear about weather delays that caused those horses to wait 28 hours in the transport. And that exceeds the amount of time where it's thought that they would suffer unduly before arriving in Japan. So we're going to hear more about that story from our reporter Karen Pauls. Also, police and emergency crews are still on the scene of what was a big fire last night on Jarvis near King. The area around Jarvis may be closed to traffic again this morning. We'll hear more in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
By the way, if you have any traffic or commuter news throughout the morning to pass along, or if something gets cleared up as well, 788-3093 is where you can reach Corey. In the first hour of the show, I can't really make the sounds well, but we're going to talk about baby talk. I think I sounded more like I was trying to mimic some kind of a bird spiraling out of control. Anyway, we're going to find out how well babies can recognize different voices and why it's important to talk to your newborn. And we'll talk gallstones on our medical column with Dr. Bardwaj. Stay with us.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
These are their stories.
Karen Robinson is one of the stars of the new series Law & Order Toronto Criminal Intent. Karen will tell you what changes when you get cast in Law & Order, for instance, your dad understands what you do, and about starting out acting in Drumheller, Alberta. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdel Mahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. A public funeral for Alexei Navalny is scheduled for the end of this week. The Russian opposition leader died at an Arctic penal colony on February 16. His supporters, along with many Western leaders, hold the Kremlin directly responsible for his death, and so does his widow. Yulia Navalny addressed the EU Parliament in Strasbourg earlier this morning. Barr Stewart has more on her message.
And Putin must answer for everything he has done to Alexei.
Yulia Navalnaya made an emotional appeal to the European Parliament, saying Russia's president should not only be held accountable for her husband's death, but for the war he's waged in Ukraine and for what he's done to Russia. She says a public funeral is planned for Alexei Navalny on Friday afternoon in Moscow.
And I'm not sure yet whether it will be peaceful or whether police will arrest those who have come to say goodbye to my husband.
Navalny will be buried a short time later. His allies said they struggled to find a place to hold a service because owners would refuse as soon as they heard the name Navalny. They've also accused President Vladimir Putin of having him killed because U.S. and German officials had suggested that he be freed as part of a prisoner swap. There's been no official confirmation of those claims.
He represented hope.
Roberta Metsola is the president of the European Parliament, which she says is united in condemning Navalny's death.
It is a crime that deserves an international and independent investigation. The world is owed justice.
Navalny went on to urge lawmakers to do more to hurt Putin's power by targeting Russian money that's been stashed in banks abroad. She also said European countries should be helping the tens of millions of Russians who are against the war and against Putin, some of whom fled Russia in the past 2 years. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Volodymyr Zelensky is in Albania for a summit with leaders of the Western Balkan countries. The Ukrainian president is greeted by his host, Prime Minister Edi Rama. Zelensky is hoping to draw support for a peace plan for Ukraine. He's proposing what he calls a just and lasting peace. Russia's war on Ukraine has entered its third year. Kyiv is struggling to hold ground against Russian attacks. The military is running short on ammunition and other weapons. Republicans in the U.S. Congress are holding up an American multi-billion-dollar support package for Ukraine. Donald Trump and Joe Biden have both won their party's presidential primary in Michigan. But for Biden, the results are mixed. Tens of thousands of Arab Americans marked their ballots uncommitted. They withdrew their support for Biden over his stance on the crisis in Gaza. The CBC's Richard Madden is in Washington. And Richard, what does this mean for Joe Biden?
Well, the good news for Biden is he easily won his primary, but Democratic voters also gave him a loud and clear warning sign. They're not happy with his handling of the Israel-Hamas war and his refusal to support a ceasefire. Now, at this point, an estimated 30,000 Democrats, or 3% overall, voted uncommitted, basically a protest vote and a message they don't want him on the ballot. Now, organizers of the uncommitted movement say the results surpass their expectations. They insist they're not looking to dump Biden, but pressure top Democrats to prioritize an end to the war. Take a listen to State Representative Abraham Ayash, who was part of that campaign.
Voters came out with a lot of enthusiasm, with that commitment. Now the question has to be to President Biden and his campaign, what will they do to heed the call of these people that have come out and said, we are a pro-peace, anti-war movement that wants our leaders to be better.
Now, it's worth noting Trump won Michigan by a razor-thin 10,000 votes in 2016. Biden flipped it in 2020. So Democrats can't afford to lose many more detractors or for their fellow Democrats to simply stay home in November.
On the Republican side, this is the fifth straight loss for Donald Trump's last remaining rival. What does this result mean in Michigan for Nikki Haley?
Yeah, in a nutshell, Nikki Haley is running out of time and a path to victory. Trump is nearly a lock to seal the Republican presidential nomination. But Haley also says the results overall show between 30 to 40% of Republicans don't support Trump, saying he may win the nomination but not the general. That's why she plans to stay in the race until at least Super Tuesday or until she runs out of cash.
All right. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Despite spending billions of dollars on incentives, South Korea's fertility rate has hit a new record low.
2023년 출생아 수는 23만 명으로 전년보다 19,200명이 줄어.
An official with Statistics Korea saying the number of newborns in 2023 was down nearly 8% from the year before. South Korea already had the world's lowest fertility rate. This is the fourth year in a row that the country's population has declined. Concerns are growing for the country's economy and pensions, given the aging population. Projections show in 50 years, South Korea's working age group will have decreased by half. By that time, nearly half of the population will be over the age of 65. The South Korean government says reversing the falling birth rate is a national priority. A Manitoba court judge has given animal welfare advocates the green light to privately prosecute a live horse exporter in the province. The ruling is believed to be the first in relation to farmed animals. Canada is among the leading exporters of live horses in the world. They're bred specifically for human consumption. As Karen Pauls tells us, it is an industry worth tens of millions of dollars a year.
And they'll be crated inside the cargo building with 3 to 4 other horses.
Dana Tong of Manitoba Animal Save says in December 2022, she documented 79 horses on the tarmac at the Winnipeg airport awaiting a cargo plane to Japan, where their meat, served raw, is a delicacy.
It's a very stressful time for them.
Weather delays meant that flight exceeded the 28-hour limit for transporting live animals without food, water, or rest. Animal rights activists filed a complaint with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, which acknowledged the breach but said there would be no penalty. Tuesday, a Manitoba court judge gave Caitlin Mitchell and the nonprofit group Animal Justice the right to charge Manitoba's Carlisle Farms in a private prosecution for failing to have a contingency plan to respond to unforeseen delays that could result in the suffering of an animal.
The least that we can do is to make sure that what few laws we do have are actually enforced.
Lyle Lumax is the exporter. He defends the decision.
It's going to take way more than 3 hours to put them back in the trucks, and then 5.5 hours home. Everybody there said, oh, this is far, far less problem for the horses.
Live exports are banned in the United States and Britain. In 2021, Canada's Prime Minister vowed to end exports of live horses for slaughter. There's a private member's bill before Parliament now. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
New Brunswick is hoping a new approach to home construction will help solve the province's housing shortage. Like most provinces, New Brunswick is seeing demand outstrip supply. A provincial report says 6,000 new homes are needed every year. As Alexander Silberman reports, large-scale modular construction could be the key to an affordable housing solution.
Entire homes are under construction inside a house factory just north of Moncton in New Brunswick. Wall by wall, they take shape quickly before being loaded onto trucks for delivery. Provincial Housing Minister Jill Green says modular construction could be key to addressing the housing shortage. More than 10,000 households are waiting for public housing, a list that has doubled over the past 4 years.
We'll be seeing duplexes and triplexes and full developments made with modular housing as well.
The province hopes existing manufacturers, which primarily build mini homes, will pivot to also build apartments. It plans to build nearly 200 public housing units this summer, with more than half modular.
A 10-unit building, and you'll have different modular units that all get put together like Lego.
The biggest advantage is speed. Brandon Searle leads the Off-Site Construction Research Center at the University of New Brunswick.
Now in modular, you're able to do the first, second, and third floor in parallel to the civil work being done.
The construction industry says modular on a large scale is a major change, and the supply chain needs to catch up. But the growing demand and funding from government could convince them to adapt. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Fredericton.
And for a look at what those modular homes look like, go to the CBC News New Brunswick page, and you can see those modular homes being lifted into place by those cranes. That's at CBC News New Brunswick. That is the latest national and international news from World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
This is CBC.
This is CBC. Good morning, everyone. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're in Information Radio, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. We're sitting at minus 21. That's the warm spot. It's that kind of morning. A really crisp and cold out there. Extreme cold north. Abby will be in with that full forecast. But you know what comes with cold? And why I sound so happy? That big blue sky coming back today with lots of sunshine. Thanks for joining us here live from downtown Winnipeg, as mentioned. Coming up this hour on the program on our medical column, gallstones. What are they? Do you actually know what it is? How are they treated? A recent study suggests that people may not always need surgery to treat gallstones. That is our medical column today. We'll hear all about it just before 7. In addition, baby talk. We're going to find out how well babies can recognize different voices and why it's important to talk to your newborn. But in a moment, we're We're going to walk through the musical life of Alexa Dirks, a.k.a. Bonia, ahead of hopefully winning a Juno Award next month. She's up for Alternative Album of the Year. So we're spotlighting some Manitoba artists this morning. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells with a spotlight on Manitoba news. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, a CBC News investigation has found some staff at for-profit homes housing children in care were giving cannabis to underage youth. Now the province says it's pulling its kids from their care. We're going to hear this I-Team report coming up at 6:30. As well, some Winnipeg Jets fans say they're not worried about losing the team after the NHL's commissioner brought a reassuring message yesterday to fans during a stopover in Winnipeg. We'll hear what was said in our next local news at 6:30.
Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Mr. Abby Adiyemi, how's the forecast looking?
Good morning. Right now we're looking at partly cloudy skies, very cold in Winnipeg this morning, and we're anticipating lots of sunlight later in the day. The high will be around minus 17 degrees, but brace yourself because of the wind chill. It actually is going to be feeling like minus 37 this morning, so there's a risk of frostbite. You need to bundle up as you start your day. But right now we are about minus 21, and tomorrow we're going to be warming up to around minus 5, and then we're going to be on the good side of the zeros after Friday. So that's like the positive thing I would want to tell you this morning. I know it's cold this morning, but let's look towards Friday.
Yeah, we're just swinging around wildly in temperature.
Now, for the folks in the northern part, an extreme cold warning has been issued for northern Manitoba, affecting several areas, including Thompson, Nelson House, Split Lake, Brochet, Lynn Lake, Relief Rapids, Petagowagan, Gillam, and Shamattawa. They're expecting prolonged period of extreme cold wind chills. Overnight lows will drop to close to like minus 35 to minus 40s, coupled with winds resulting from the wind chills, and it's going to be making it feel like minus 45 or colder tonight for folks in the north. Now, for these wind chills that's going to be coming during the day, you should be expected to see some frigid conditions, and you need to take care, because for folks in Winnipeg this morning, waking up and stepping out to just a minus 21 temperature, and it's smashing in the face, making it feel that harsh.
Yep.
For folks in the north, it's going to be even harsher, so you need to brace yourself for that this morning. But right now, Winnipeg is saying minus 21.
We'll be okay. We're Manitobans.
You should ask Corey. I don't know what. Oh, did he run in this morning? No, I don't think so.
He didn't. He was working overnight, but you were out and about last night. So for you, what's your take on the commute this morning?
Yeah, you actually did get a call already from Susan, who's out on Highway number 1 westbound, heading towards Brandon. She said she was actually stuck in traffic on Highway 1, right smack dab between Eli and Port Prairie, right near that turnoff to Oakville there. She wasn't totally sure exactly why. I did take a look, and I know there's some construction happening right near that intersection both ways, but I don't know if that's the cause or not, but she couldn't quite see. It took her about 10 minutes just to kind of get through that area, that turn off to Oakville there at 4:30 and 13 there on Highway 1 going west. But if you see anything else going out there, if you have an update on that or anything else you're seeing, if you're walking, biking, driving, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. I'll let folks know what they're seeing out there. That number, 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, we're beginning celebrating Manitoba music leading up to the Junos next month. Let's begin with the story of Alexa Dirks. It's been just over a year since Winnipeg pop icon Alexa Dirks, a.k.a. Bonia, released her album Powder Blue. It went on to be shortlisted for the 2023 Polaris Music Prize, and it is currently nominated for Adult Alternative Album of the Year, as I mentioned, at the Junos, which are coming up next month. To mark the anniversary, Up to Speed show director CBC's Chloe Friesen takes a look back at Alexa's musical journey.
I've been an Alexa Dirks fan since before she went by Bonia. Big flex, I know. I first saw her perform in a barn in the village of New Bergtal near Altona. So there's a quaint little music venue there known as the Kron Barn, and I went to a show for a band I'd never heard of called the New Lightweights. The trio was made up of world-renowned guitarist Ariel Posen, drummer Ryan Voth, and of course, Alexa Dirks on vocals. Now, Alexa's voice is captivating, as you'll soon hear. The New Lightweights got together and released their first EP in 2009, simply called Demo. Here's a tune from that album, Sinking Feeling.
Cars pass by, right by my window. It makes me wonder, where did all the time go to? I could walk down to the red, red river. I know you'd be there waiting, but I can't deliver what you need. Oh, would you still be waiting around for me? Seasons pass, May turns to summer, and winter pounds a soul fist down. I can't feel the ground, can't feel my fingers. My lips are numb beyond compare, so I'll just sit and stare. Even though I know it's long gone, even though I know it's so wrong, always worth telling me the words you say are true. I should really put my trust in you, but how can you be so sure? There's a sinking feeling, there's a sinking feeling, there's a sinking feeling that I can't run from, just can't walk away.
That was Sinking Feeling from the new Lightweights, and during that time, Alexa was also in Juno Award-winning band Shikamin with some other Manitoba artists you might recognize, Wink Wink and Drina Turen. But we're going to jump ahead a few years when Alexa launches her solo career under the name Begonia. She released her first EP, Lady in Mind, in 2017, which featured cover art of Alexa surrounded by, you guessed it, begonia flowers. Now is when fans of Alexa's voice could also become fans of her songwriting. She's a really vulnerable storyteller, and her soulful voice just adds to that emotion. Let's head back to 2017. Here's Begonia with Juniper.
It's got a real good feeling. All my shit's gonna hit the ceiling. Then you'll see what I've been trying hard to keep myself from revealing. I've got a real good feeling. Oh no, is this what I've been dreaming? You're gonna find yourself wondering if I'm who I said I was from the beginning. I'm sure there's still some years worth stealing, and I'm never above a fight, so let's fight. It's alright. Too many late nights makes me songs that I can't write. Go and smoke till the daylight, getting closer but not quite, not quite.
That was Begonia with Juniper. Begonia's debut album, Fear, is then released in 2019 to rave reviews, and Begonia starts to bloom. The album is even longlisted for the 2020 Polaris Music Prize. We start getting a real taste of Begonia's artistry and creative risk-taking here. Take a listen to a bit of Beats.
Oh, I think it's courageous of you. Your thoughts are contagious. When you don't really know what to do, but you keep going through the stages. And anyway, any day, I wish I was anyone else instead of myself. Oh, I keep feeling you're gonna hurt yourself. It's not your birthday, baby. If there is nothing wrong, why am I down so
And now for the album that's raking in the awards and accolades, Powder Blue. Released just over a year ago, it made the Polaris Prize shortlist And it's up for Adult Alternative Album of the Year at this year's Juno Awards. This album is peak Begonia, if I do say so myself. We got powerhouse vocals, gorgeous instrumentals, and that personal yet universal songwriting. And I've got a song here that I feel encapsulates all three. Take a listen to Marigold.
Sitting in the bleachers, waiting for my time. Crushes on all the student teachers, searching for that perfect line. I always wanted just to fit in, but couldn't sit in the role of what a woman should be. And when the girls came around in jerseys, hard to play down, I was weak in the knees. Remember how I felt back then, scared to tell any of my friends. Was it contextual, or am I bisexual? Standing on a church pew.
A little bit of Begonia walking through her musical career to this point. That was Chloe Friesen taking us through it. The 2024 Juno Awards are happening in Halifax March 24th. As mentioned, Begonia and other Manitoba artists up for awards this year, as always, well represented. They will be streamed live on CBC and CBC Gem.
Choose between God and you, it's true. I chose myself.
Well, speaking of music, you might be up right now singing to your baby. Or maybe you're just talking to your baby. Up next, Canadian-based research is something we're going to be discussing. It's all about babies and talk. That is our little sound effects artist, Cal Funk. Thanks for the setup, Cal. But what is Cal saying and who's he talking to? A new study documents how newborn babies can recognize their own mother's voice. And soon after that, they recognize voices belonging to their father or other parent or close family members. Now, that might not be that surprising. But when it comes to unfamiliar voices, evidence now suggests that whether the speaker is male or female is a factor in determining whether babies can tell voices apart. Joining us to talk about this is Madeline Yu. She's a PhD candidate in the Department of Psychology at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, and her study was published just this past January in a journal affiliated with the Acoustical Society of America. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us. So first, can you tell us a little bit about how your study, how you conducted it and what you discovered?
Right. So obviously we can't ask babies at this age to respond for themselves or complete a computer task like we would with adults. So we have to infer what they're perceiving in the world just by their behavior alone. And so here we looked at their looking behavior. And so in our study, we essentially just played different speech samples by a certain male speaker over and over again while monitoring their looking behavior to an image that's displayed simultaneously as the recordings. And essentially what we are looking for is to see their looking behavior. First, we anticipate to be quite high, that they're really interested in the task and are playing booths that we have them sitting in. But as we play the same person speaking over and over, we then expect them to kind of get bored and basically habituate or learn the voice. And at this point, we then switch to a new speaker and see if they look more at the image, kind of indicating that they've detected this change. And so we did this with female speakers in the same exact paradigm and the same exact by the same experimenters. And we found that they're able to detect this change with female speakers or unfamiliar female speakers. And here we did this with unfamiliar male voices, and we found that they actually did not show any change in their looking time, which indicates that maybe they aren't able to tell apart these male voices.
Any idea? I don't know how deep your research went, but about why that is?
Yeah, so we haven't really explored why this is. At this point, we just see that there is this difference. But we did test to see if it was just to confirm it wasn't the particular voices that we picked. So we did run a series of studies with adults, and nothing about our voices appeared to stand out. They were equally distinctive compared to the female voices, and adults were able to tell all of the voices apart equally as well. So it does appear that at 4.5 months, it is more of a apparently developmental stage where telling apart unfamiliar male voices is quite a challenge. But we're exploring to see whether, I think one of our leading theories is that perhaps it has something to do with the experience that they have early on. So we know that human beings themselves are quite highly adaptable to the environments that we are in. And we see this with like the types of languages that we learn, the faces that we can recognize better than others. And so, in fact, all of the families that we asked all reported that their baby had a female primary caregiver, which isn't surprising given the 7 to 12 month maternity leave here in Canada. So, yeah, we would definitely need to explore this theory
a little bit more. What were the female voices that you played for the babies? Was one their mom and was one another woman, or was it two different female voices?
No, so importantly here, we know we wanted to talk with unfamiliar female voices.
Yeah, of course,
so
you mentioned that. You took the mom out of it.
Yeah. So the mom was not part of it, even though we know that they're quite good at telling their mom's voice and their dad's voice too.
So let me ask you this.
Just unfamiliar.
Let me ask you this, Madeline. I'm sorry to interject here. I just want to make sure we don't run out of time for all the info you've got.
No.
So when we talk to babies, we just, as human nature, we raise our voices like tonally. We start going, oh, you're so cute. We get up here when we talk to them. What impact could that have on a baby's ability to understand us? Like, should we be doing that?
Well, yeah. So we know that just talking to babies talking to babies in general is important. And we just find ourselves doing that kind of high-pitched baby talk. And that does seem to grab their attention. And that's something that is important when trying to talk and interact with babies. We see that they also respond to us by cooing, and this grabs our attention. So it is a bit of a give and take. And these interactions then become conversations. So this is just important, crucial to like language development in general, beyond even voice recognition skills.
Does your study, someone might hear the results that you were talking about the unfamiliar voices, male, female, and with men, that the distinction wasn't there as much in the study. Does it mean that dads should talk to the babies more?
I think that, yeah. So while we have to explore this, I think that it's likely that this type of exposure to just hearing dad's voice just a lot in general allows them to be able to recognize their own father's voice at 2 weeks. And so this is something that we think is likely to be playing a role. So yeah, just talking in general, even not in baby speak, can also be important. So our study didn't even have that high-pitched speech. And so we can tell that infants are even processing speech in just around them, just not even, it doesn't have to be to them even.
Madeline, thank you so much for talking to us about this morning. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
And so does Cal. We think he's saying thank you there. Madeline Yu's been with us this morning, PhD candidate in psychology at the University of Toronto, Mississauga. By the way, this was a small study, 48 infants, but if you want to read more about it, you can check out the work at the U of T website pages. Quick traffic note here before we get into the news at 6:30. Susan called the commuter line, as you mentioned. Corey was mentioning this earlier, but now we have a bit more information. So westbound Highway 1 near the turnoff to Oakville, so right between pretty much Portage La Prairie and Eli on number 1, there has been a collision. It is blocking the westbound lanes. Emergency crews are on scene. Traffic is completely stopped right now, so some people are trying to take gravel roads to get around. Be very careful through that area. So westbound Highway 1 near the turnoff to Oakville between Portage and Eli. Thank you so much, Susan, for the update, and we'll update us if that gets cleared as well, or if we have any more details on what happened. 788-3093 is where you can reach us on the commute line. Minus 21 in Winnipeg, and coming up, we're going to have business news. Stay with us right now, your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. It is a cold start. We're going to be sunny, a high of minus 17 today with a risk of frostbite. This is the last really cold day. We do start to warm up tomorrow. The province is moving away from a for-profit company that had been housing children in care after it was revealed workers were giving teens cannabis without a prescription. CBC I-Team's Caroline Bargout reports.
Some former staff and current workers say teens living in Spirit Rising House homes get a choice. They could collect their weekly allowance or forgo it to get a gram of cannabis a day. The province says once it heard about that, it decided to end its relationship with the for-profit company. Spirit Rising House operates 9 foster homes and 2 specialized group homes for Level 5 kids in care. Those are youth who have the highest, most complex needs, many of whom have addictions issues. Through his lawyer, one of the owners of the homes told CBC News cannabis was used as a harm reduction method to keep youth from taking harder drugs like meth. It's not clear when the province will find new placements for the kids. The Winnipeg Police Child Abuse Unit is investigating. Caroline Bargout, CBC News, Winnipeg.
NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman says Winnipeg is a strong NHL city. Speaking before last night's Jets game, Bettman says he met with several local groups to answer questions about the NHL in Winnipeg.
Obviously, the attendance needs to improve, but it will. I have a confidence in the organization, and as importantly, I have confidence in this community.
Bettman doesn't view the dip in Jets season ticket holders as a crisis. He thinks the Jets season ticket base will rebound. Now, Winnipeg Jets fans who spoke with CBC last night agree. Ian Moffat remembers when the previous Jets left Winnipeg in 1996. He's not worried about losing this version of the team.
I was about 10 years old when the Jets left the first time, and I was devastated. I have a great time every time I come. I come to lots of games every year, and I will continue to come. And maybe I'll buy into a season ticket package, but I think they're safe.
Commissioner Bettman says the Jets ownership has made extraordinary commitments to the Jets and to Winnipeg, and to specifically downtown Winnipeg, involving hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, Winnipeg police and emergency crews are still on the scene of what was a big fire last night on Jarvis near King. They are on the scene still this morning. CBC's Megan Ketchison is there as well. Megan?
Well, this is Jarvis at King, and it's a 3-story warehouse. There is smoke absolutely pouring from this building. So this fire started about 8 o'clock last night in this old warehouse that's here at Jarvis and King. And there is an aerial truck now that is pouring water on it, but the smoke is still just pouring from the building. As far as we know, the crews were going to be here for another several hours. They do have a drone crew checking in, looking for hot spots. But again, as I say, there's lots of smoke still pouring from here, and Jarvis is closed at King. Reporting live, Megan Ketchison, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Megan. Manitoba's public insurer is suing Ford over 8 vehicles destroyed by block heater fires. The lawsuit says those fires happened between March 2022 and April 2023. Manitoba Public Insurance says the block heaters were plugged in to appropriate power source when they caught fire. It alleges the block heaters were defective and that Ford should have properly tested them. The lawsuit asks for more than $250,000, the amount they paid out to the owners of the vehicles. None of the allegations have been proven in court. Ford did not respond to a request for comment on Tuesday. The federal court has given animal welfare advocates the green light to privately prosecute a live horse exporter in Manitoba. 79 horses from Carlisle Farms in Swan River were bound for Japan and human consumption. Manitoba Animal Save says in December 2022, it documented the horses on the tarmac at Winnipeg's airport awaiting a cargo plane. Weather delays meant the flight exceeded the 28-hour limit for transporting live animals without food, water, or rest. The exporter, Lyle Lumax, defends the decision to continue with the transport.
It's going to take way more than 3 hours to put them back in the trucks, and then 5.5 hours home. Everybody there said, oh, this is far, far less problem for the horses.
You can hear more on this story coming up on World Report at 7. Well, the Winnipeg Jets brought it home in a divisional matchup.
Here comes Kyle Connor, shoots it, scores!
Kyle Connor in the first period on TSN as the Jets double the Blues 4-2. Also scoring for Winnipeg, Alex Iafallo, Sean Monahan, and Brendan Dillon with his 7th goal of the season, a career high. Dillon says his team didn't play well in the first 2 periods.
We were losing these games last year in the second half. We were finding a way to lose, or letting that one goal go in, or that really bad turnover at a certain time. So I think it's just credit to all the guys in this room here. All 4 lines, all 60. We're understanding the situation situation. And like you said, we're not playing at our best, still finding a way.
It was Winnipeg's fourth straight win. The team now hits the road for 3 games starting first tomorrow night in Dallas. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
And you can find more on the Jets online, cbc.ca/Manitoba. A little bit later in our show, we're actually going to have a conversation with a season ticket holder who is no longer a season ticket holder. So we'll find out what she made of yesterday's press conference here in town. Right now, though, let's get to Abby Adeyemi, who has our chilly forecast.
Yeah, good morning once again, Chile. You say we're experiencing partly cloudy skies with current temperature hovering around minus 21 this morning in the city. Now, there's a crisp breeze with winds, and the high for today is expected to reach minus 17 degrees. However, the chill could feel like minus 37 this morning, and then towards your lunch break, it's still going to be chilly, but it would just feel less chilly and around minus 24. But just be cautious, there's a risk of frostbite, so you need to cover up. However, in Brandon, it's partly cloudy over there. The temperature is around minus 26. Today is also going to be cloudy for folks in Brandon. A high of minus 18 you'd see, and the wind chill could make it feel like minus 36 this morning. So for folks in Brandon, also a risk of frostbite. Up in Thompson, there is an extreme cold warning with temperatures around minus 38, 39 right now. Now, despite the sunny weather you're going to see later today, the high is around minus 22, and that wind chill value you'll be seeing might make it feel like minus 40, minus 50 this morning, leading to frostbite in minutes. So you want to take care out there. And also one last place to touch in the north, Churchill is experiencing ice crystal right about now, and the temperature is around minus 31 degrees. Today will be sunny. Moving to Dauphin, minus 24. Gimley's at minus 26. Steinbeck at minus 22. And Morris at minus 21.
I'm calling it a real toque day.
Yeah, it's a toque day.
Like, leave the fashion toque aside, the one that looks cool but doesn't actually warm your ears, and get that wool one that really stays on your head.
And also the mittens.
Oh, yeah, no one's forgetting mitts today. We have an issue in traffic on Highway 1. Corey's here to update us in case you've missed us mentioning this.
That's right. Got a call from Susan. Highway 1 westbound, which is right near the turnoff to Oakville, which is right pretty much smack dab between Portage La Prairie and Eli. There's a collision there that has both westbound lanes completely blocked. Emergency crews are on scene. Traffic is at a standstill. Some folks are trying to take gravel roads to get around that, says Susan. But if you don't have a gravel road nearby, you're pretty much stuck waiting for that to be cleared. So if you are heading west towards Portage La Prairie this morning, you may be in for a very slow commuter and may want to find another way to get where you need to go. Here in the city, we heard from Megan about that fire on Jarvis Street. The Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service has closed Jarvis between Main and Schultz due to that fire, and that pretty much could be the case, it seems like, for most of the day is what they suspect. And also, I can tell you, I was there in the area last night, and that smoke is everywhere in that area. So if you have sensitive lungs or anything like that, I could feel it in my throat for just driving through the area and your eyes. So just be careful if you are heading through there. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. I'll let folks know what you're seeing out there. 204-788-3093.
All right, thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Time for business news with Phil DeMont. Good morning, Phil.
Funny, I was listening to you talk about the weather. I grew up never, ever wearing a hat, and I always find it uncomfortable to ever wear a hat, no matter how cold it is, but I have a feeling I'd be wearing a hat out there.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's Danger Bay cold this morning. That's there's no other way to say it. Yeah. Let's talk about air travel. Last week we heard the news about Lynx Air, but there's a lot of analysis to be done here. So Lynx Air out of Calgary stopped flying last week. Overall, what does it say to you about Canada's budget airline industry? What's your analysis?
Well, basically that there really isn't one anymore. Lynx Air, 9-jet operation out of Calgary, offered ultra cheap flights, like $49 one-way Calgary to Vancouver. Last week the carrier said it didn't have enough cash to continue and couldn't get any more money from its investors, so it parked the planes at Calgary's airport and told passengers you're kind of on your own. Bigger picture, though, analysts say, is maybe Canada can't support a budget airline sector, especially one with ultra-low prices like Lynx. That's really troubling because Lynx actually had experienced people running it and deep-pocketed investors financing it. Still couldn't make it go, but the number of budget carriers that have failed up here, growing. Swoop, Zoom Airlines, Jets go. Roots Air, yep, the clothing company tried to fly planes back in 2001. That didn't go very well. The reasons for the failures, experts say, grab bag of gripes about government regulations and taxes. So foreign ownership restrictions in the sector hurts the ability of carriers to raise cash. Too many taxes. A recent estimate said 35% of your airfare is airport fees, security charges, and all that government taxes. So picking on Porter Airlines, flight from Toronto to Vancouver, $382. Government and airport add-ons, $132. Some things, though, you can't change. For Lynx Air, the COVID lockdowns and the grounding of the Boeing jets in 2019 really hurt its rollout. But in Canada, you got a smallish population spread out. That makes flights expensive. For example, it's cheaper to fly from Toronto to Vancouver than it is to fly from Toronto to Thunder Bay. Some factors you can change, some stuff you can't.
To another story, Wendy's says it will test out surge pricing. I guess kind of like what Uber does. Do a lot of companies do this, though?
More than you'd think. Amazon, Best Buy, Kroger's in the U.S., every airline I can think of, they all do some sort of dynamic pricing. Marcy, it's a fancy way of saying we hike prices when the demand is highest. Wendy's, the latest to join the parade, the company's CEO on a conference call said they're going to spend $20 million rolling out digital menu boards. Now, it's a technology and think, well, it's kind of benign. No, what it does is it allows the change to switch prices on the menu as demand changes. A little unclear what they're thinking here in terms of their theory, but probably is not coming to Canada anytime soon. There's a couple of ways this model works. The obvious one is Uber. That's where you find the price for your drive jumping as the weather is bad or more people want to ride, the concert gets out. Airlines have been doing something similar for a long time now. You find the prices for a flight, especially a long one, cheap months before you want to travel, but they start creeping up the longer you wait to book. Target, using a little more of a sophisticated model at points. Here you pay more if you're in the store rather than you're sitting in your car ordering in the parking lot. The theory here is that if you're walking the aisles, you're more committed to buying something and are willing to pay a higher price. Walmart wants to roll out digital price tags at 500 of its stores this year. That means it can change prices on the fly. All this to me makes perfect sense. Stores and airlines basically just seizing on the fact that more people are willing to pay, or some people are willing to pay more for an item or a service. So maybe if you're waiting for the $4 Wendy's burger and it's crowded and it goes up to $5, people leave and you say, well, I'll pay $5 so I can get through quicker because I have to go. And they're just making more money, and it's kind of revealing who has more of an interest in paying more for something.
And finally, because we don't talk enough about her, sorry, how can Taylor Swift help your economy, Phil?
Yeah, she can save the world, I think, at this point. But by getting more tourists to come to your city or your country, that's Singapore's model. City-state has a slew of concerts on the books this year. And they're hoping to draw droves of visitors to stay at hotels, eat at restaurants, all that stuff. In January, Coldplay played 6 nights at the National Stadium. 200,000 tickets sold out within hours of going on sale. That's 2/3 of the total attendance for the 6 shows. Taylor Swift, she's there for 6 shows in March. When she announced, hotel bookings in the city jumped 10% immediately as a result. It's called event tourism. Sports events like the NCAA basketball tournament, the Blues Fest in Ottawa, things like that, where you get a chunk of people coming for that specific event. A U.S. survey last year found that special events were going up the chain as a reason why people travel. And one advantage if you're a city or a country to these type of tourism, better than backpackers, these people spend more. Swifties spend more than $1,300 on food and buying things every time they go watch her sing somewhere.
Markets this morning, what are they looking like?
A bit negative in the UK, down more than 0.75%, but they're going sideways in Germany and France. Hong Kong dropped its proposed rules in the property sector. That market down 1.5%. Shanghai went with it, down 2%. Oil off 87 cents, $78 U.S. a barrel, and the Canadian dollar down 1/3 cent, 61.64 cents U.S.
All right, Phil DeMont, thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
With business news, that is Phil DeMont. Highway news. Highway 1, the turnoff to Oakville. This is Highway 1 West between Ely and Portage. There's delays there. There's been an incident. Emergency crews on scene. If you need us, 788-3093. Weather-wise, -21, partly cloudy in Winnipeg. Thompson, up north, an extreme cold warning there. You're sitting at -41 right now. Winds are calm. Here in Winnipeg for the rest of the day, we'll see some sunshine and a nice big blue sky, a high of -17 in the city. Well, next Friday is International Women's Day, and this might be one of the songs that you might want to have on your playlist for that day. Indidio's upcoming album is for women who don't follow, quote, the plan of settling down into domestic life. So it's called Simple Songs for Complicated Times, and from it this morning, a tune called So Cold.
Too many thoughts, they occupy your brain. Spin around and around, keep forgetting your own name. Don't know what you need, you just blame and blame and blame. Oh, all I want are seasons that bring change. Oh, all I want is to live free without pain. Oh, all I want is an end to all these games. Just to be free without the shame. But it's so cold, it's so cold in here, you're so cold. You're so full of fear, you've been told. There's no way out of here, it's so cold, 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 cold. It's so cold in here. Said all I want is an end to all the lies. Oh, all I want is an end to the divide. Oh, all I want to enjoy my own time, to live in love and endless peace of mind. But it's so cold, it's so cold in here, you're so cold. You're so full of fear, you've been told. There's no one out of here, it's so cold, 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 cold. It's so cold in here. You're looking for love, you got to give this up. If you're looking for love, then you better warm on up. Trying just to survive. Let's put an end to feeling barely alive. It's time we take a stand. Together we can rise. Oh, it's so cold. It's so cold in here. You're so cold. You're so full of fear. You've been told. There's no way out of here. It's so cold, 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 cold. It's so cold. So cold, you're so full of fear, you've been told. There's no way out of here, it's so cold, 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 cold. It's so cold in here.
Do you hear people and you just think, man, they sound cool. I like to go out with them for a drink and have a big talk. That's Indidio. That's what her voice does for me. The tune's called So Cold. She's out of British Columbia. Her new record is Simple Songs for Complicated Times, and it will be out on April 19th.
Last week, Terry O'Reilly demonstrated how a construction worker got into a sticky situation.
Strong enough to hold this man suspended in midair.
This week, find out how an ad agency made something gross smell glorious.
Kathy's gotten used to the smell of lingering garbage in her kitchen.
Seeing is believing. The power of demonstration commercials, Part 2 on Under the Influence, Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
I'm Marcy Marcusa. Good morning, everyone. everyone. You're listening to Information Radio here on CBC 89.3 on the app or on YouTube. And I just want to mention that in traffic, you're going to want to know this about the highway this morning. Highway 1 West. You're going to face issues. Traffic had been stopped. In fact, they're tending to an accident that happened there. This is around the Highway 1 West at the turnoff to Oakville, so right between Eli and Portage. And it looks like it's quite involved. So we will pass along information as we confirm it, but that is Highway 1 West at the turnoff to Oakville. 788-3093 if you have any updates. So stay safe out there, everyone. Cold this morning, a little bit icy in town as well on some of the side streets, but they have done some scraping and sanding here in the city of Winnipeg after the snow was down. Well, next it's time for our medical column. It is Wednesday morning and it's 10 to 7, and that's when Dr. Raj Bhardwaj is with us. About 20% of women and 10% of men in this country are going to develop gallstones by the age of 60. Now, that's according to the Canadian Liver Foundation. Gallstones, you might know, can cause a lot of pain and discomfort, and a lot of people end up having their gallbladder surgically removed as a result. But a recent study published in the British Medical Journal suggests that a rush to remove the organ might actually not always be necessary. House Dr. Raj Bhardwaj joins us to explain.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what is actually the gallbladder and what's its purpose?
Yeah, remember when we talked about the appendix and I said it's a little organ that doesn't get a lot of attention until something goes wrong with it?
I do.
Same with the gallbladder. Yeah, same with the gallbladder. So it lives in your abdomen. It's tucked in behind your liver, just under the ribs on the right-hand side. It's about the size and shape of a small pear. And its job is to store bile, which is a digestive fluid that's made by your liver. So between meals, your liver keeps making bile, but it gets stored in your gallbladder until your digestive system senses a load of fatty foods coming through that need to be digested. And then the gall bag basically squeezes out the bile into your intestine through a little tube called the bile duct. And there's a couple of other important pieces of tubing in that area. Your liver drains digestive enzymes into your intestine, and your pancreas does too. And that's important because, spoiler alert, something's coming up. So the bile mixes in, passing by, and then it helps to digest the fats in the food that you ate. And it works really, really well until something goes wrong.
What actually are gallstones then?
Right. So the most common thing that happens when the bile is just sitting in the gallbladder waiting to be released is sometimes it clumps together and it forms these little gallstones. And they literally are a stone. It's like a hard lump. It can be as small as a grain of sand or like a small pebble or the size of like a big marble. And gallstones are pretty common. Like you said off the top, somewhere between 10 and 20% of adults have gallstones, and they get more common as we age. But way fewer people will actually have problems because of their gallstones. So on average, of all the people who have gallstones, over a period of about 10 years, maybe only about a quarter of those folks will have symptoms caused by their gallstones. So most of the time, we don't even know if we have gallstones unless we happen to see them on an ultrasound or a CT scan, or unless we go looking because you're coming in with belly pain or something like that. And the problem is not just having gallstones. The problem is if one of those stones gets stuck in the tubing and then blocks the tubing. So then it can block the drainage of bile juices from your gallbladder, or it can block the drainage of stuff from your liver or your pancreas, or all three. And that is a problem. And if it completely plugs up the pipe, that's actually a surgical emergency usually, because it causes inflammation of the organs and it can cause infection and things like that. But most of the time, that doesn't happen. Most of the time, it's sort of, the gallstone might kind of just intermittently block the exit of the gallbladder, and then people might get belly pain, usually right upper side abdomen, kind of under your rib cage where the gallbladder lives. But you also might feel it more in the sort of middle of your abdomen, just under your ribs. Or, weirdly, some people feel gallbladder pain in the tip of their right shoulder.
Really?
Because of the way it's just the way your nerves are interconnected. That's called referred pain. So if you're having pain like that, especially after eating, then you can see your doctor. We can do blood tests to check your liver and pancreas to look for signs of sort of infection or inflammation. And then we can do an ultrasound to look for stones, to look for inflammation in the area, blockage of the gallbladder or the other organs.
Now, if someone is having gallstone problems, how is it treated?
Right. So if we find that you have a gallstone stuck in your pipes and it's causing inflammation of those organs, the gallbladder, the liver, or the pancreas, then that's a serious emergency. Surgery needs to be done. We need to get that stone out of the tubing, and we need to usually remove not just the gallstone, but the gallbladder itself. But if you're only having sort of intermittent belly pain and nausea, maybe after eating a fatty meal, things like that, but the symptoms come and go. And if we discover that you have gallstones, then we might say, well, your problem is probably caused by gallstones. We should book you for surgery at some point in the future to have your gallbladder removed. Or we can try what's called conservative treatments, like changing your diet to help avoid further attacks, managing your pain when you get it with medications. There are even some medications that promise to help to dissolve the stones, but usually as soon as you stop taking the medicines, the stones form again. But the gallstone attacks, they tend to get worse and more frequent over time, to the point where we usually do eventually advise people to get their gallbladders surgically removed.
Is that what this recent study looked at then?
Yeah, exactly. So the researchers all around the UK, they looked at over 400 adults who were diagnosed with gallstones causing pain, but who didn't have any emergency features of like a gallstone stuck in the tubes. And so they randomized people into two groups. People were either scheduled for surgery, so non-emergency elective surgery, but they were scheduled within the next few months, or people were not scheduled. And they said, you know what, just come back if you have more pain and we'll do your surgery if it becomes an emergency. But in the meantime, here's some info on, healthy diets and stuff like that. And then the researchers followed people in those two groups along for the next couple of years to see, was there a difference between the two groups? How did they do? Was there a difference in their overall pain, their general health, even their social functioning and mental health? And they found that there really wasn't that big a difference at all. There was no big difference between people who were booked for surgery and had their gallbladders removed versus people who were told, let's wait and see if your gallbladder problems become an emergency, then we'll remove your gallbladder. And it's pretty interesting because it suggests that not only do people do okay for at least a couple of years without having their gallbladders out, but there's some healthcare cost savings to be had as well by not doing elective gallbladder surgery on everyone who comes in with gallstones that give them pain. Now, the big limitation is they only followed people along for a couple of years, and if people had big problems, then they got surgery anyway. But it reinforces this sort of rule of thumb in medicine, which is that surgery is great for people who really need it, but that we should try to avoid surgery when it's safe and possible to avoid it. And this study says that for people with gallstone pain from time to time, it's probably okay to try to avoid surgery for a little while at least.
All right, Dr. Bardwaj, thank you.
My pleasure.
That's Dr. Raj Bardwaj in our medical column. Heather Wells now with headlines.
A CBC News investigation has found some staff at for-profit homes housing children in care were giving cannabis to underage youth. Now the province says it's pulling its kids from their care. We're going to hear that story coming up as well. Winnipeg police and emergency crews are still on the scene of a big fire last night. Jarvis near King. They've been there since 8 last night. They're still there this morning. Smoke continues to pour from that building. We'll take you there in our next local news at 7:30.
Speaking of things to keep an eye on here, we also are watching what's happening on Highway number 1. This is just west of Eli. So Highway 1 westbound in that area right now is closed. They're looking at an accident that has happened. We're getting details from the scene right now, but we can tell you that people are turning off onto take mile roads to get around that. So that's Highway 1 just west of Eli. 788-3093. In the forecast, very cold this morning, minus 21, and our high today is going to be minus 17, but lots of sunshine expected. Up north, an extreme cold warning for Thompson. It's going to be really cold already. It's minus 41. Well, this will warm you up in the next hour.
Bill Nye, the science guy.
Yeah, that Bill Nye, the one that taught you about science when you were younger. He's coming to Winnipeg for his live show. We'll hear about what he is fighting right now and why he's crossing the country to talk climate change. So stay tuned. Bill Nye is after 7.
Today on The Current.
He wanted to go home. He badly wanted to go home and get in his car and find his car and drive off. It is a familiar story for many Canadians. Health journalist Elizabeth Payne's father went to hospital after a fall that led to a cascade of other health issues. He died the next year. How to fix the healthcare system for seniors, coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. The funeral for Alexei Navalny will take place in Moscow this Friday. The 47-year-old Russian opposition leader died earlier this month in an Arctic penal colony. Many Western leaders are holding Russian President Vladimir Putin responsible for his death. So is Navalny's wife. Yulia Navalnya spoke to the European Union Parliament earlier this morning.
We spent a week getting Alexei's body and organizing funeral. Then I choose the cemetery and coffin. The funeral will take place the day after tomorrow. And I'm not sure yet whether it will be peaceful or whether police will arrest those who have come to say goodbye.
Alexei Navalny's funeral will be held in a Moscow church. He will then be buried at a nearby cemetery. Russian authorities say Navalny's official cause of death is still unknown. There's growing concern among politicians around the world when it comes to their security. Here in Canada, the cost to protect members of parliament from threats has hit a record high. Now the British government has announced a new multi-million-dollar package to beef up security for its MPs. It says the threats have only intensified amid growing tensions over the war in Gaza. The CBC's Abhi Kodasan has more from London.
Elected officials must answer to their constituents, but UK Home Secretary James Cleverly says harassment is not part of their job. The government has announced an additional £31 million in security to protect MPs. This includes bodyguards for some politicians, additional police patrols, and expanded cybersecurity. British Deputy Prime Minister Oliver Dowden.
We accept threats of violence as being routine against elected politicians, whatever their colour, is deeply dangerous for our politics, and we need to call it out.
The government says intimidation has increased in recent weeks because of the war in the Middle East. London has seen multiple protests in recent months, urging the Conservative government to call for a permanent ceasefire, which is what 66% of people in the UK want, according to a new YouGov poll. But Cleverly says these massive demonstrations should end.
The right to free assembly and free speech is an ancient right.
John Rees is with the Stop the War Coalition.
On our last demonstration, for instance, we had 250,000 people on the streets of London. There were 12 arrests. That's less than there are in Oxford Street on a Saturday afternoon.
MP security has been a concern for years in the UK, especially following the murders of Joe Cox in 2016 by a white supremacist and David Amos in 2021 by an Islamic State supporter. Both were out meeting with people in their constituencies. Abhi Kwadas, CBC News, London.
Here at home, members of Parliament will vote on a motion about the controversial ArriveCan app. The Conservatives are demanding a full accounting of every dollar spent on the application to date. They also want the Liberal government to collect and recoup all of the money paid to contractors and subcontractors who did not actually do any work. The CBC's Janice McGregor joins me now from Ottawa. And Janice, what can we expect as this controversy builds around the app?
Well, this vote this afternoon may be non-binding on the government, but opposition MPs sounded determined to get to the bottom of this in debate yesterday. The Auditor General, of course, already tried to come up with a full accounting. She couldn't find the records to do it, though, and the allegation that thousands of emails were deleted, key documents destroyed, that's now under investigation by the Information Commissioner. For the Conservatives, this motion keeps Parliament focused on what Pierre Poilievre says is a Liberal cover-up.
Will the Prime Minister commit here and now to giving the RCMP all the documents and evidence on ArriveScan?
The Honourable Minister for Public Security.
We have total confidence in the RCMP to do this important work.
As Dominic LeBlanc said there's a police investigation underway, but not strictly about the ArriveCan app. The RCMP commissioner told the Ethics Committee yesterday it's about what he called the totality of the contracts involved. One red flag raised by whistleblowers at the Canada Border Services Agency was how under contracts specifically set aside for Indigenous businesses, the work was being done by people who aren't actually Indigenous. Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu said her department's now auditing the integrity of these procurements.
I think that contracting fraud needs to be held accountable if that's what it is.
And meanwhile, multiple House committee probes continue, Janice.
That's right. Officials from Public Services and Procurement Canada will be testifying this afternoon. The Auditor General's report suggested the use of so many sole source contracts to develop this app was questioned by procurement officials, but it carried on anyway.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Joe Biden won his party's presidential primary in Michigan last night, but tens of thousands of Democrats in the state also sent another message. They marked their ballot uncommitted. Michigan has a large Arab American population. Many withdrew their support for Biden because of his stance on Israel in the face of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Linda Sarsour heads one of the activist groups.
The big coalition that we built, the media attention that we've garnered from around the world has already put our message forward in a very important way. I feel positive. I was speaking to voters who were so excited to have an opportunity to what they believe is send Joe Biden a message that we are outraged and we are going to participate in democracy regardless.
Michigan is expected to play a decisive role in the November presidential election. That is expected to be a rematch between Biden and Trump. A major drugstore chain is being accused of abusing an Ontario health program. It's aimed at helping patients manage their medications. A CBC News investigation has found the company is pressuring its employees to make unnecessary phone calls, all at the taxpayer's expense. The CBC's Rihanna Schmuck has the details.
Mary Fernando says the call from her local Shoppers Drug Mart came out of the blue. A pharmacy employee asked the Ottawa woman about the asthma inhaler she'd been using without a problem for years.
They asked if I was still using the medication, which was an odd question because I refill it routinely.
Fernando said yes, and the conversation was over, all in less than 5 minutes.
It was just a bizarre conversation.
Turns out the call was made under Ontario's Meds Check service. The government program reimburses pharmacies for reviewing certain patients' medication. CBC News spoke with former Shoppers Pharmacy employees who say the company is routinely doing medication reviews with customers who don't necessarily need them. Shoppers can then bill the province up to $75 a call.
It's a shame. It's a disappointment.
Pharmacist John Nan says it's part of the reason he quit last year. He says his old manager protected him from corporate pressure, but then new leadership introduced targets.
That was the last straw that broke my back because I would not do it.
Shoppers President Jeff Legere says management does not pressure staff and that the program has been an overall success.
We obviously monitor this very closely, take these allegations very seriously, but really believe that meds checks and med reviews are actually having a positive impact on Canadians.
For her part, Fernando says she was so bothered by the issue, she switched pharmacies. Rihanna Schmunk, CBC News, Vancouver.
Take action, take control. That is the message of a new cancer awareness campaign for Black women. They often face poorer health outcomes when diagnosed with breast cancer. As Tashana Reid reports, this campaign focuses specifically on genetic testing.
My first thought was, I'm going to die.
At 34, Alicia Bryan was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. After surgery and chemotherapy, she did a genetic test to find out her risk of the cancer coming back.
Once I found out that genetic testing was possible, I realized that that was information that I needed.
Genetic testing looks for a mutation to the BRCA1 or BRCA2 genes by a saliva or blood test. If detected, it means a greater lifetime risk for developing certain cancers. Alicia tested positive. She opted for a preventative mastectomy.
Because it's information that can empower.
Now, a new campaign from Toronto's Women's College Hospital, bringing awareness to Black women about genetic testing. It says Black people make up just 1.5% of its Screen Project program since it launched in 2017. Dr. Aisha Lofters is a researcher at the hospital.
The knowledge about these genes is lower than it should be in the Black community.
Black women are more likely to be diagnosed with more aggressive types of breast cancer. and at a younger age.
So this is the tube that your saliva goes into.
The hospital is promoting genetic self-testing kits.
By catching it very early, you're able to change the path of that disease.
Provincial healthcare plans cover genetic testing for patients with cancer or a known family history.
I'm planning for a family. I'm planning to expand my career.
Alicia says the test offered her a path forward to focus on her future. Tashana Reid, CBC News, Toronto.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report News Anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, good morning, Manitoba. Nice clear sky in Winnipeg this morning, but lots of exhaust fog. Very cold. Thanks for joining us here on CBC's Information Radio, on the CBC Listen app or on YouTube. Or on good old 89.3 FM. I'm Marcy Marcusa, as mentioned, with our team at the show. This hour on the show, coming up at 10 to 8, a CBC News investigation has found that some staff at for-profit homes housing kids in care were giving cannabis to underage youth. Now, the province says it's pulling kids from their care. The CBC's I-Team's Caroline Bargout will be here with that story, and that's coming up just ahead of 8. In addition, it's leap year this year. Tomorrow, that extra day, leap day. But what does it actually mean? Coming up, we'll talk to an astronomer about it. But we begin with someone who taught a lot of kids about science. Bill Nye, the science guy, is coming to Winnipeg this weekend. But first, we'll talk to him. We also have some serious developments in traffic this morning, so we'll get to those as well. Now, that is coming up right after your CBC News headlines with Heather Wells.
Good morning. The province is moving away from a for-profit company that had been housing children in care after it was revealed workers were giving teens cannabis without a prescription. Families Minister Nahanni Fontaine says she was very troubled to hear underage teens were given cannabis by staff. Some Winnipeg Jets fans say they're not worried about losing the team. This after the NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman brought a reassuring message yesterday to fans during a stop in Winnipeg. We'll hear more in our next local news at 7:30.
All right, thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So let's get to Corey Funk first with our traffic situation. I mentioned something is happening on the highway.
Yeah, westbound Highway 1, just west of Eli, there's a collision that has traffic at a complete standstill, but there are cars trying to get around it by taking the Mile Road to get around that. Heard from Tracy that the traffic is the only way you can get around it is by pretty much taking the mile roads to get around. But eastbound traffic is still moving, but you maybe want to find another way to get where you need to go if you are heading west, because sometimes people who are stuck in traffic, it is very, very slow going heading westbound.
And we should mention this is an involved accident.
Correct.
We don't have, looks quite involved. We don't have a lot of detail yet that we can share on air.
We've reached out to RCMP for details.
Great, and it looks like it might be for part of your morning commute. So just make sure you note that if you're heading out a little bit later, that might still be a factor.
Right, and here in the city, just keep in mind if you are heading kind of through the North Exchange area there, Jarvis between Main and Schultz is closed because of that fire we've been hearing about in the news that broke out overnight. Derby is also closed between Dufferin and Sutherland while crews tend to that fire, and that probably is going to be the case for a good chunk of the day. And just heads up, very, very smoky in that kind of downtown Main Street North Exchange area. So heads up there if you have some lung issues. If you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line, 204-788-3093.
Thank you, Corey Funk.
Thank you.
Abby Adeyemi, the forecast now for today.
Good morning. Once again, you talked about exhaust fog, and I'm like, that's the only thing that might not distract you, that will distract you from seeing the clear skies this morning. But we have clear skies greeting us in Winnipeg. It's cold, it's chilly. We're anticipating lots of sunshine. The high for today is expected to reach minus 17 degrees, but the wind chill is going to make it feel like minus 37 as you start your day, and there's a risk of frostbite, so you need to be cautious out there. Currently, we are at minus 21 degrees. For folks in the north, an extreme cold warning has been issued for northern Manitoba, affecting several areas from Thompson all the way to Shamattawa. This is expected to bring a prolonged period of extreme cold, wind chill, and overnight lows would definitely be dropping to around minus 35 to minus 40. So you might really want to take it easy and protect yourself. But right now, Winnipeg, it's clear, and we are at minus 21.
Well, we begin this half hour on CBC with a Zoom conversation with a guy I think you'll recognize.
Bill Nye the Science Guy. Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Science rules.
So I don't know if you're bopping along to Bill Nye the Science Guy, but a lot of people, just upon hearing that, it brings back recollections and memories of teachers wheeling in an old squeaky TV cart to their class, or maybe playing an episode of Bill Nye the Science Guy. If you are not one of those people, Bill Nye is a beloved scientist who had a show teaching kids the basics of science. It was taped in the late 90s. It covered topics like motion, cells, sound, and even nuanced topics like the science of music. But since then, Bill Nye has turned his attention to more pressing matters like healing our heating planet and the unwillingness for a lot of people to address the issues we have with climate change. Bill is going to be coming to Winnipeg at the Concert Hall on Sunday for his touring show. It's called The End Is Nigh. Of course, a play on his last name. And he joins us this morning via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
So I'm going to start with serious matters here, Bill. It's a thrill to have you with us on CBC. But for someone that spent years, teaching kids about the planet across the globe, about what was happening, what does go through your mind when you see some of those same kids now, many of whom are in positions of power, not taking climate change or climate action seriously?
My experience is people who are reluctant to accept the fact of climate change did not spend very much time learning about science, did not spend a lot of time with the Science Guy show. The people in political positions who are not willing to address climate change and are going to, as the expression goes, age out, which many other of us would describe as dying. And then when that happens, people will get to work. But the question for everybody is the so-called near run thing. Like, are we going to get enough people voting and insisting on making changes to the way we produce, especially energy, in time to preserve the quality of life for billions of people? This is the great question. And so what I'm hoping to do is give you guys a nudge so that Canada leads the world and makes the world better for everyone on Earth. So let's go. How hard could it be?
Your title, The End Is Nigh, is it actually how you feel?
Oh, yeah. So everybody, the end is nigh. We shot it in Montreal, people. What we want is for people to realize that the Earth is a very special place. We are perfectly suited to living here. We can't live anywhere else. So we have to take care of it. Do you know Apophis? Are you familiar with Apophis?
I'm not, no.
Apophis is, one translation is the Greek god for anxiety. And there's an asteroid named Apophis that's going to come not just closer than Earth's moon, closer to Earth than our out there satellites, our geosynchronous satellites, in 2029. Now, if an object similar to Apophis were to strike Earth, that would be that. It would be on a Windows computer, you would say Control-Alt-Delete for civilization. On an Apple machine, it would be wipe, I guess, for civilization. So we don't want that to happen. So on the End Is Nigh show, 6 episodes, we have 6 world-ending scenarios, one of which is the nucleus of a comet, essentially just like an asteroid, hitting Earth and causing all kinds of trouble. We have volcanoes, giant volcano in what is now Wyoming in the U.S., just south of British Columbia, south of Alberta, would explode and bury a tremendous amount of farmland in North America, and that would cause starvation, which would be undesirable. And then we have the one that I really worry about, actually for reals, is these solar flares, so-called coronal mass ejections from the sun. The corona is the outer layer of the sun. If we had 2 of those in a row, you could hypothetically turn off all the electricity on Earth. So what we want to do is get people excited about these issues so that we prepare for them. So on the episodes, The End Is Nigh, shot in Canada, the world ends. The first half hour, the world goes really bad. Things go very badly for Earth. And then I get killed. But then in the second half hour, I come back. Everything will be great with what? What will make everything great when we embrace what?
Science.
Yes, well said. But I say all the time, very excited to come to Canada because I believe that Canada has a unique place in the world and could be a world leader in its way of governance, its people, the village, and the remarkable, just hard to even imagine for most of us, natural resources. So I'm very excited to come to Edmonton and Winnipeg, and we're going to tear it up, as they say. We're going to have fun. Looking forward.
What do you hope people take away from the show? I mean, you've outlined, obviously, you hope to amp things up, and that Canada could be a leader in climate change. But what about kids? Does the way that we teach science need to change, you think, in 2024?
Well, change. You just need more of it. So even now, 21st century, there are people who do not embrace what I like to call the fact of life, which is evolution, the fundamental discovery in all of life science. And so that is leading us to make all kinds of unusual decisions having to do with the way humans make babies and the way we handle diseases. And so you say, how should science education change? Well, let's maybe not change, let's just have more of it.
What gives you hope in Gen Z and Gen Alpha when you look at those upcoming generations around this question of climate change and what comes next?
If you have to be optimistic or you're not going to get anything done. If you think, as I say, if you think you're going to lose the game, you'll lose before you even get on the ice. You have to believe that you can beat the other team. We have to accept that we can do something about any of these problems. Global pandemics, extreme poverty, and climate change. We have to believe that we can get her done or we won't.
Bill Nye, thank you very much for all of your time today.
All right, you guys, thank you. Carry on. Let's change the world.
Bill Nye, that's a conversation I had with him yesterday via Zoom. He will be in Winnipeg on Sunday at the Centennial Concert Hall. You can get tickets at centennialconcerthall.com. Now, as Bill mentioned in the interview, The End Is Nigh was originally a one-season show, a series on Peacock, and he's turned this into a live show you'll see Sunday. We have a pair of tickets to give away. You a Bill Nye fan? You want to go? So send an email to win@cbc.ca. You have until the end of the show to enter, win@cbc.ca, and give us a description of your favorite school science experiment. I got a couple of those. What was your favorite school science experiment? Win@cbc.ca. We'll choose a winner at random after the show.
Whether you're hanging out or out on the move, stay in the know with CBC Listen. The cost of living with Paul Havershrud goes beyond facts and figures.
Real estate is the 800-pound gorilla of Canada's economy.
And What on Earth with Laura Lynch explores the climate change crisis, problems and solutions.
What happened that made you start to think and see climate change differently?
The Cost of Living and What on Earth. Available now on CBC Listen.
7:23 a.m. Sports in a couple minutes here. We can tell you in traffic, Jarvis is closed between Main and Schultz. That's because of the fire last night. Still probably smoke in the air this morning. And also Highway 1 in traffic just west of Eli. Westbound Highway 1 is closed there. You're taking commuters, rather, who are reaching out to CBC are turning off onto mile roads to get around an accident that has happened. We have... not more detail that we can report on air at this point, but call us if you have an update, 788-3093. It is minus 21 in Winnipeg right now, and it's going to be around minus 17 for the day. Well, before we get to sports, I want to get to some of your comments because we're asking about Leap Day, which is tomorrow. We asked you with that in mind to tell us about a time that you took a leap. And we've got some great comments. Arlene Bombach says, after wanting to fly since the age of 12, I'm now 58 years old and I'm in ground school. Yay, you. Arlene says, I'll start flight lessons soon. I guess that's my flying leap. Jane Hebden says, I've been leaping for the last year, and this Thursday, tomorrow on Leap Day, I'm editing the final copy to get my poetry book ready for publication next month. That's amazing, Jane. Congratulations to you on that. Julie Kentner took a leap work-wise. She says, I left a job I've been in for 20 years to take on a new management position. I've been learning lots. I've been building new connections, and it's exciting to do different work. Vincent Tangley wrote into us, moving to Winnipeg in 2019 was a leap for us. Manny Martins Carmen said, late last year, I turned 60 on the last day of 2023. So naturally, Manny says, I decided to start powerlifting. Because if not now, then when? And to put a cherry on top, I registered for my first meet in March. How cool is that? So good luck at your meet in March, Manny. And if you've got a story about a time you took a leap in advance of Leap Day, we'd love to hear about it. So you can write to us, as those listeners did, to our Facebook page, which is my Marcy Marcusa page and acts as a show page in the morning hours. But you can also call us 788-3205. Well, right now, 7:25, and starting with hockey in morning sports, where survival in varying forms was at play last night. Scott Regera joins us now live. Hello there.
Hey, Marcy, right you are about that. The Jets got a goal, a rare goal from Alex Iafallo, first in about 2 months for him, as they got by St. Louis 4-2. So their 4-game winning streak survives in that match against St. Louis, although it is survival of a more significant kind, of course, people in the city have been concerned about. The Jets have been drawing small crowds, we know that, for years now, and that's prompted worries they could lose the franchise, among some anyway. And that happened, of course, back when the Jets were moved to Arizona in 1996. The guy behind that relocation in Winnipeg last night, seemingly to quell concerns about history repeating itself, here is the Commissioner, Gary Bettman.
I was quoted in 2011 saying, for this to work well, the building's got to be full, and that's true. And this will get sorted out. We're not operating under the sword of Damocles. This is part of the evolution of what franchises sometimes go through. Let's be clear about something. I believe that this is a strong NHL market, and it will adjust.
All right. So the commissioner can dismiss concern about franchise relocation all he likes, Marcy, but the reality is the team's drawing 13,000 a game, fewer than any but the aforementioned Arizona Coyotes, who play in that rinky-dink college arena. Winnipeg season's ticket base only made up of around 15% corporate ownership compared to other Canadian markets with between 45 and 85%. All of this part of the reason we heard from Mark Chipman just last week with The Athletic, saying things need to change or else. So Bettman can dismiss comparisons to ancient Greek history, all he likes, but there is compelling evidence the Jets, like Damocles, are perched beneath a sword hung by a single hair, and Bettman has control of that single hair.
So we're going to hear more in the next hour. We have a season ticket holder on, so a former season ticket holder, I should say. So we'll just talk to her about why she gave up on it.
Yeah, and I like when you think about corporate support and the long-time seasons ticket holders, so many of them, 30 years removed now from the relocation to Phoenix. Those people, the breadwinners in society, those who were in their prime, they were all young and in that romance phase with hockey when they moved. And I wonder how much that has... You never forget,
well,
right?
We'll ask about it.
Yeah.
We better move on to other stories here. Let's switch over to baseball now. It was a harried return for the Jays for a former ace pitcher.
Was it ever? Towing the rubber for the Jays for the first time since last August, Marcy, Alek Manoah showed rust and very little else. In a spring training game against Detroit, he lasted a mere 38 pitches. Not even half of those were strikes, and 3 of them hit Tigers' batters. So shades of the wild Alek Manoah that we saw last season, rather than of the Cy Young candidate he showed himself to be in the previous campaign. But with all that said, Manoah was drawing positives from yesterday's game.
The biggest thing, last year, never felt like I got to my true velocity, and I feel like, right now, just not having to think velocity and kind of just feeling that natural flow and then being able to have pretty good velocity. So for me, that's kind of a really good checkpoint. You kind of want to have starts where everything doesn't feel the best now instead of having it when it matters.
Manoah summed things up, Marcy, by calling his display an inexpensive experience. And maybe that's how the Jays should look at it. For all of his talent and early success in the majors, Manoah still doesn't cost Toronto very much. His rookie contract pays him less than $1 million a year. If Manoah does regain his form, it'll be gravy for the Jays since they've already moved to bring in other starting pitchers to fill Manoah's once sizable void.
And lastly, briefly finishing with soccer, big match for Canada's women's team tonight, we should mention here.
Yeah, a win this evening over Costa Rica, Marcy, would likely see them enter the knockout phase of the Gold Cup as the tournament's top seed. Outside of their success at past Olympic Games, a win at this event would be the biggest ever accomplishment for Canada's women's team. The Gold Cup does involve the best countries from North and Central America and the Caribbean, but this year also includes the best teams from South America. Usually the U.S. is a heavy favorite, but we saw them lose to Mexico this week. They're vulnerable, so opportunity knocks for Bev Priestman's side this evening with kickoff at 5 Central Time.
Now, we can't let you go because you're on YouTube so everyone can see this. We had a big discussion this morning about toques and how you need a real toque in Manitoba this morning because it's so cold. You look awesome, but is that actually even over your ears, man? That's a fashion toque.
It's not just a fashion toque. What this is a bad hair coverer. Whatever it is, that's what it is at its heart. I promise you that.
Well, I think it's looking good, but...
Beat poetry tomorrow for you.
Talk to you then, Scott. Thank
See
you.
ya.
It does have that vibe. Coming up, we're just having comments about a time you took a leap. After your CBC Winnipeg News, we'll actually talk about what leap year is really all about. Your news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30. It is frigid. We're at minus 21. We're going to see a lot of sun today, but no heat. In fact, we've got a risk of frostbite with an afternoon high of minus 17. The good news is the warm-up begins tomorrow. A CBC News investigation has found some staff at for-profit homes housing children in care were giving cannabis to underage youth. Now the province says it's pulling its kids from their care. The teens had been living in homes operated by Spirit Rising House. That for-profit company received more than $2 million in funding last year to care for level 5 kids who have the most complex needs and many with addictions issues. Families Minister Nahani Fontaine says she was very troubled to hear underage teens were given cannabis by staff.
I think it's really important to recognize that we are talking about some of the most vulnerable, at-risk youth with incredibly complex needs and files.
One of the owners of Spirit Rising House says cannabis was used as a harm reduction method so the teens wouldn't go out to get harder drugs like meth and opioids. The Winnipeg Police Child Abuse Unit is investigating. You can hear more on this story coming up in this next half hour right here on Information Radio. Some Winnipeg Jets fans say they are not worried about losing the team. This after NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman brought a reassuring message yesterday to fans during a stop in Winnipeg. Attendance at Jets games has dropped after the team sold out almost every game during its first 9 seasons. Gary Bettman says he believes the team will find ways to get more fans in the seats. Season ticket holder Martin Haffenbrack doesn't think the timing of Bettman's visit was a coincidence.
There's been some not so delicate undercurrents of needing more revenue, needing more season ticket sales and all that kind of things. I think this is kind of the affirmation of that going. We bring in the big guy to bring the whole thing home and put a different face on it.
Haffenbrack says he plans to keep his season's tickets. A stubborn fire is still burning in the North End almost 12 hours after it started. CBC reporter Megan Ketchison is on Jarvis near King. Megan?
Yes, well, right now we have fire crews that are pouring water on this 3-story old warehouse. This used to be the former Imperial Soap Building, and the roof is gone. Smoke is pouring from it, plus the Speedy Glass building that is next to it. The 2 buildings destroyed. From what we understand, no one was hurt, but again, fire crews still here 12 hours later. At one point, there were 20 pieces of machinery here. Now there's an aerial ladder. The drone crew are keeping an eye looking for hot spots. But again, right now, smoke is absolutely pouring from this building. No one hurt as far as we know from what the police are telling us. And if you look at the building, building. It's just covered in icicles because of the very cold temperatures. And police and fire crews are expected to be here. This is on Jarvis between Derby and Main Street. Reporting live, Megan Ketchison, CBC News.
Thanks so much, Megan. Manitoba's public insurer is suing Ford over 8 vehicles destroyed by block heater fires. The lawsuit says the fires happened between March 2022 and April 2023. Manitoba Public Insurance says the block heaters were plugged into an appropriate power source when they caught fire. It alleges the block heaters were defective and that Ford should have properly tested them. The lawsuit asks for more than $250,000, the amount MPI paid out to the owners of the vehicles. None of the allegations have been proven in court. Ford did not respond to a request for comment yesterday. The federal court has given animal welfare advocates the green light to privately prosecute a live horse exporter in Manitoba. 79 horses from Carlisle Farms in Swan River were bound for Japan and human consumption. Manitoba Animal Safe says in December of 2022, it documented the horses on the tarmac at Winnipeg's airport awaiting a cargo flight to Japan. Weather delays meant that flight exceeded the 28-hour limit for transporting live animals without food, water, or rest. The exporter, Lyle Lumax, defends the decision to continue with the transport.
It's going to take way more than 3 hours to put them back in the trucks, and then 5.5 hours home. Everybody there said, oh, this is far, far less problem for the horses.
The federal court yesterday gave Caitlin Mitchell and the nonprofit group Animal Justice the right to charge Carlisle Farms for failing to have a contingency plan to protect the animals from undue suffering. We'll make that 4 wins in a row for the Winnipeg Jets. Alex Iafallo in the third period on TSN as the Jets double the Blues 4-2. Also scoring for Winnipeg, Kyle Connor, Sean Monahan and Brendan Dillon with his 7th goal of the season, a career high for Dillon. Dillon says his team is winning even though they're not always happy with their play.
We're not really happy with how we've played the last few, but we're getting wins. So I think that's a credit to us is, through 40 minutes to come in here, regroup after the second and say, hey guys, that's not us. We're winning the game, but we've got to lock it down here.
The Jets now hit the roads for 3, starting with a game tomorrow night in Dallas. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, Heather Wells, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, speaking of the Jets, everyone's been talking about them a lot, of course, the last 24 hours especially. After 8 o'clock, we're going to talk to a season ticket holder, or rather, I should say a former Jets season ticket holder, about why they stopped going to the games. So what did she make of yesterday? That's coming up right now. Sun's coming up. Abby Adiemi's in with our forecast.
Yeah, the sun's coming up right now. I see the clear skies with current temperature hovering around minus 21 degrees. It's very cold in Winnipeg this morning. We're anticipating lots of sunshine today. The high is expected to reach minus 17 degrees, but the wind chill could make it feel like minus 37 this morning. There's a risk of frostbite, so be cautious out there. Now we switch over. We go to Brandon. It's partly cloudy over there. We're seeing a minus 27 degrees. It's going to be sunny today. The high for today is expected to be at minus 18. The wind chill makes it feel like 36 this morning, minus 36, and there's a risk of frostbite also for folks in Brandon. In Thompson, it's currently cold. There's an extreme cold warning for folks in Thompson. It's currently minus 38 degrees. It's going to be sunny today. The high is expected to reach minus 22. Now, with a wind chill of minus 49 this morning, frostbite, it should be happening in minutes. In Churchill, it's currently ice crystals at minus 34 degrees. For today, you'll see sunny conditions, and then the wind is going to be coming light later this afternoon, and the high is for minus 28. With a wind chill, it's going to feel like minus 47 this morning. Frostbite also in minutes. Dauphin is at minus 25. Gimli partly cloudy at minus 26. High for today, minus 16. The wind chill feels like minus 38. There's a risk of frostbite. Steinbach at minus 23. Morris at minus 22. It's going to be sunny. And of course, the wind chill makes it feel like minus 34 this morning. Also a risk of frostbite. Across the province, it's really chilly, cold, but that risk of frostbite is something you should take into consideration. But right now, Winnipeg, we are at minus 21.
Jeff of the G just called our traffic line. Weston at Pacific, there's been an accident. It is blocking both lanes. So that's Weston at Pacific. Now, the bigger one incident, I shouldn't say bigger and qualify. But the one we've been talking about throughout the morning is on Highway 1, Corey.
That's right. Highway 1 west of Eli both westbound lanes, as far as we know right now, are still blocked because of a very involved accident that we've heard reports about. We don't have any more details about the accident itself, but we do know that it is blocking both westbound lanes just west of Eli on Highway 1. People are able to get around on those mile roads. Eastbound traffic is still able to get by, but it is causing some backups as folks kind of figure out what they need to do as they kind of approach those closed lanes there. Thanks to the callers, Susan and Tracy, for giving us updates on that. If you have an update on that, I'd love to hear more about what you're seeing there and what's happening. Also got a call from St. Vital Import, northbound Main Street, right at the Main Street Bridge there where it becomes St. Mary's. In the middle lane, there's a stalled car catching folks off guard. So keep left or right to get around that. No delays that I heard of yet, but that may change as traffic picks up. But if you see anything else going on out there, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number 204-788-3093.
All right. Thank you, Corey Funk.
Thank you.
Well, next on the program, you may have noticed that there's an extra day in February this year, tomorrow. That is because it's leap year. But what is a leap year? And why do we have them? Well, let's remind ourselves. Scott Young is with us, planetarium astronomer over at the Manitoba Museum. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So why do we have leap years, Scott?
Well, it's to keep our calendar in sync. Oops. Sorry about that. We're keeping our calendar in sync with the seasons and making sure that each year sort of follows along the same pattern. We've got two things that are happening. We've got the Earth, our planet, spinning around in space, and that gives us the length of our day, 24 hours. We've also got the Earth going around the sun, and that gives us our year, which is 365 days. Sort of. It turns out that it's actually 365 and a quarter days for the Earth to go around the sun. And so if we want to sort of correct for that error, either you have a messy calendar where there's a quarter day each year that you have to, track 6 extra hours, which is a mess, or you do what we do now, which is ignore it for 4 years, and then in the fourth year, you just put in an extra day, and that mostly takes care of those errors and keeps our calendar sort of in sync.
What would happen if there wasn't a leap year, if we just let it go?
Well, that's what we used to do a long time ago, and what happens is that the seasons start to creep forward from the calendar dates, and so instead of spring, the first day of spring that we're all looking forward to right now, happening on March 21st, it would get later and later in the year. And if you let it go for too long, spring wouldn't happen until April or May or June. And in this era would just build up and build up. So back in the 1500s, they actually had to delete 2 weeks out of the calendar because they hadn't been making corrections for, more than 1,000 years, and things were getting out of sync, and they realized this has to be done. So in about 1528, I think it was, they dropped March the 1st was followed by March the 15th. So you can imagine what a mess that would have been if you were, paying a monthly rent to your landlord, or if you were, had money invested or any of those kinds of things. It's just a big mess. So it's much easier to take care of this every 4 years like we do now.
Why February? Why is it added in this month?
I'm pretty sure that it's just because February is already the shortest month. If you were to take an extra day and stick it onto one of the 31-day months, suddenly you'd have a month that was 32 days, and we don't have that in our calendar. And again, that would mess things up for anything that's handled on a monthly basis. If you have an agreement where you're dealing with something every month, suddenly you're getting an extra free day, whereas February has always been a shorter month, and so now it's a little bit longer. I think it's just easier for people to wrap their head around, but we could stick it anywhere. We could have a completely separate day or a completely separate month tacked on at the end of the year, for example, or something like that. We could do whatever we wanted, but it's been put into February, I think, just to keep things as simple as possible for the average person.
Is there also something, Scott, called a leap second?
Yeah, so it turns out that both of those things I said at the beginning about the day and the year aren't exactly accurate. The day is about 23 hours and 56 minutes long, which is very awkward. And the year is slightly less than 365 and a quarter days. So those give us some inaccuracies. But then on top of that, the Earth's rotation actually changes on a very, very long-term kind of situation. And to keep the clock in sync with where the sun is in the sky, we actually will add or sometimes subtract a leap second to the clock on New Year's Eve. And that's a very, very minor kind of thing. Most people don't even know that it happens. But if you use timing for anything really specific, like astronomers do, for example, those numbers become important as well.
I remember talking all about this in the context of the year 2000. Remember?
Oh yeah.
When it was like, oh, what will happen when the clocks change, and will they all be in sync, and how does leap year factor into this? And when every second mattered around the world, if people were watching the clock.
Right.
There's so much folklore around leap year. I mean, some people talk about taking the leap, and they other people talk about in Italy. I understand it can be seen sort of almost as a negative thing. In astronomy, I guess it's the facts are the facts. We need to right the ship, right?
Yeah, well, pretty much. And I mean, astronomers, when we do calculations or things like that, we actually just count days from a date way back in the past. So we use something called the Julian date, and so it's it's day 2,440,000 whatever. We don't even worry about the months or things like that, because those are artificial constructs. Those are things that we just made up to help people keep track of time and to put sort of a nice face on what Mother Nature is doing. But when it comes right down to it, these are based on the fact that our Earth is spinning and the fact that we go around a star. And those periods we don't have any say over, so we just have to figure out a nice way of keeping track of them.
Do you do anything special on Leap Day yourself? We've been asking listeners for stories about a time they took a leap, and some people
No, I haven't usually done taken a leap or anything like that, but I've definitely just enjoyed the extra day. It feels like a weird day, like when something as constant as the calendar has a change in it, even though it's every 4 years and we see it coming. It does feel a little bit mysterious and makes you think about the things that we take for granted, like the calendar is just this thing that we've all grown up with understanding. And it makes me realize, oh yeah, well, there are other cultures that use different calendars, completely different. There's the lunar calendar, of course, and in the past there have been other calendars that had much longer time periods, like the Mayans and things like that. The way we keep track of time is actually a really, really interesting story. And this is just sort of like a peek behind the curtain a little bit. It reminds us what's going on in the back when we see this leap year jump out at us on February 29th.
Well, thanks for teeing up tomorrow for us. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Scott Young has been with us live, planetarium astronomer over at the Manitoba Museum. And if you want to tell us a time that you took a leap, you can continue to write to us your stories on Facebook or call us 788-3205.
There are stories you just can't stop thinking about. They take you somewhere, they introduce you to someone, they share something new with you. Liftoff. Those are the stories you want to share with your friends, and CBC's award-winning documentary team is bringing them to you every week on Storylines. Storylines, new this season on CBC Radio 1, and always on demand on the CBC Listen app.
13 minutes to 8 o'clock right now, and I want to mention that coming up in this half hour, we're going to have a deeper look at a story that's in the news this morning about the province moving away from a for-profit company that was housing kids in care after it was revealed that some workers were giving teens cannabis without a prescription. So that is still ahead. Right now, it's mostly clear in Winnipeg. Nice blue sky out there, and cold, -21, lots of exhaust fog. It's kind of a tea and jammies morning, if I do say so myself. Not sure what's up in your house. Next, a bit of music from a Juno-nominated group that you might know, especially if you like CFL football, because they had the theme song for the CFL for a while. Talking about the Reclaws, their brother-sister duo. They come from rural Ontario. This tune is called I Grew Up on a Farm.
It ain't 'cause of my truck. It ain't 'cause of some George Strait song. Yeah, these blue jeans might be ripped, but that ain't how I bought them. It ain't 'cause of these boots. I'm sticking out like a damn sore thumb. Anytime I'm anywhere but where I'm from. Why can't city lights just feel like home? I'll tell you if you really want to know why I gotta watch the sunrise. Job ain't ever done till it's done right. I'll tell you what makes me cry about a steel guitar, and why I gotta work so hard, why I'm always saying amen just to be away from my best friend, why I gotta toss a line when I see a lake, and why I'm always praying for rain. You ask me why you are the way you are. I grew up on a farm.
It's a bit of my grandpa. It's a buzz on a Friday night, and it might be a bit of a drive, but just come on down and you'll see why.
Why I gotta watch the sunrise. Job ain't ever done till it's done right. I tell you what makes me cry about a steel guitar, and why I gotta work so hard, why I'm always saying amen just to be away from my best friend, why I gotta toss a line when I see a lake, and why I'm always praying for rain. You ask me why you are the way you are. I grew up on a farm. Oh, it's in my blood, it's in my bones. Oh, it's all I've ever known. I gotta watch the sunrise. A job ain't ever done till it's done right. And I got acres of reasons why. It's who I'll be till the day I die. I'll still be saying amen.
The Reclaws and I Grew Up on a Farm, although in their case, it was the Yeehaw Adventure Farm near Cambridge, Ontario, where they entertained tourists as a brother-sister duo. It is 9 minutes to 8 o'clock this morning on your Wednesday. Thanks for spending some time with us here on CBC. It's minus 21 degrees in Winnipeg. Today's high minus 17. Big blue sky out there, but very cold up north. An extreme cold warning in Thompson. It's minus 42 in Thompson. Well, next on the show, let's get more detail on a story, as I mentioned, that's been in the news. The province is moving away from a number of foster homes run by a for-profit company called Spirit Rising House. This comes after it was learned that some workers were giving underage teens in their care cannabis as part of a harm reduction strategy. The I-Team's Caroline Bargut is here to tell us more. Good morning.
Good morning.
So how did you first learn about cannabis being given to these teens?
So about a month ago, a worker posted on the social media site Reddit about this and then promptly took it down. So we managed to track down several people who currently work at Spirit Rising House group homes and foster homes, as well as some former workers. Now, they said that Spirit Rising House staff were giving underage teens in their care a choice. Either they get their weekly allowance or they could forego it for a gram of marijuana or cannabis every single day. Now, this was considered a form of harm reduction because the teens were staying at home to smoke the cannabis as opposed to going out and getting harder drugs like meth or opioids. In case it's not obvious, it's illegal to give underage kids cannabis. We're not identifying any of the workers that we spoke to because they're really concerned about harm to their future employment. But here's some of what they told us. This is a quote from a former employee. They say harm reduction is great when it's being used as harm reduction, but what we were doing was providing weed every day at 3:30. A worker said an underage teen who'd never smoked pot in her life had moved into a Spirit Rising House home, and she started smoking it every day. A current employee said that kids, they do get great care in these homes, but they say that the agency took their harm reduction plans a little too far. They said if people were providing these kids with a gram of weed every single day, what happens when they're not in their care? We should be preparing them for real life because some of these kids, the second they turn 18, they're out of our houses. They're gone.
So those are all quotes from the workers. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand the province is, as we mentioned, now pulling kids from their facilities.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
Who did you speak to about this?
So we spoke with Nahani Fontaine, but I'll get to her in just a minute. We also spoke to, we tried to speak with Spirit Rising House. They did not get back to us for an interview. However, a lawyer for the company did send us an email from one of the owners, Ian Rabb. He's a well-known addictions advocate who is one of 4 owners of these group homes. The email said that Spirit Rising House homes adopt a harm reduction approach in youth care, particularly for high-risk youth who are addicted to opioids and methamphetamine. He said that pot can be prescribed by physicians and that youth are also buying it and using it instead of much more harmful drugs. The email goes on to say that the harm reduction approach acknowledges when a young person is making a choice that's less harmful to themselves as a positive choice. He said, quote, "We all agree that abstinence is where we want to be, and choosing to use cannabis instead of opioids or meth and other illicit hard drugs is a step in the right direction."
How many kids are in the care of Spirit Rising House?
There are 34 kids in Spirit Rising House, and they have 2 specialized group homes as well as 9 foster homes. We spoke with Families Minister Nahanni Fontaine. Now, she says the government got involved a few weeks ago after a staff member brought this to her attention. Now, the minister ordered an immediate review. She also put a hold on all future placements for Spirit Rising House. Now, we interviewed her on Monday, and Minister Fontaine said that the government is ending its relationship with the company.
My priority is the safety of those youth. And we're talking about some of the most vulnerable, at-risk, traumatized children in Manitoba. And they deserve the very best care. They deserve to be safe. They deserve to be seen, to be heard. And certainly, at the end of the day, they deserve to be protected and loved. That is my concern. That is my number one concern and my number one priority as the minister responsible.
Spirit Rising House operates 2 specialized group homes and 9 foster homes, which I had mentioned. Most of the youth that live in these homes are considered level 5, which means they have the highest, most complex needs. Now, Mr. Fontaine said that the province is looking to move the teens out of these homes and put them elsewhere. But of course, this is going to take some time. She also said the province notified police, and the police child abuse unit is now investigating.
Now, you also spoke with a pediatrician, I understand,
I did.
Dr. Ruth Grimes. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I should mention that cannabis used instead of meth and opioids is actually a form of harm reduction for adults. But what this house was doing, or what these homes were doing, is they were using it as a form for harm reduction for kids as well. But it should be prescribed by a doctor. Now, Ruth Grimes says that she's never actually prescribed cannabis to a young person, to an underage person. She's a pediatrician. She said that cannabis use can cause harm to a young person's brain that's not fully developed. Here's a little bit more about what she said.
We know it affects short-term memory, it affects attention and abilities to complete complex tasks. And we know that teens, let's say, that are using cannabis on a daily basis definitely have impaired academic functioning because that short-term memory, that working memory, processing speed, all of that is impaired. So it has longer-term implications for their functional outcome in terms of education and adult performance.
There's a shortage of placements for kids in care in Manitoba, so it's probably going to take some time for the province to find new homes for these teens because, again, we mentioned there's 34 of them, so they're going to need quite a few homes.
Caroline, thank you for bringing in your story today.
Thank you.
You can read more about it online, by the way. Caroline Bargut is a reporter with CBC Manitoba's I-Team. She'll also have more in the story, more details tonight on CBC News at 6. So cbc.ca/Manitoba. I always like to remind you when Caroline's in that if you have a confidential tip for the I-Team, you can simply call 204-788-3744. Heather Wells is in with other stories developing today. Hi there.
Good morning. Manitoba Public Insurance is suing Ford over 8 vehicles destroyed by block heater fires. MPI's lawsuit says the fires happened between March of 2022 and April 2023. The insurer says the block heaters had been plugged into an appropriate power source when they caught fire, and the suit alleges the block heaters were defective and that Ford should have properly tested them. Some Winnipeg Jets fans say they're not worried about losing the team. This after the NHL's commissioner brought a reassuring message yesterday to fans during a stop in Winnipeg. We'll hear more more in our next local news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
After 8, we've got a season ticket holder on as well. So we're hearing from a number of different people. So this one is a former season ticket holder. And what did she make of yesterday's announcement? That's coming up on the show after 8. I'm Marcy Marcusa. You're listening to Information Radio on CBC. Cold morning in Winnipeg. It's minus 21, a high minus 17 with a nice clear sky today. Up in the north part of the province, clear and minus 42 in Thompson, and there is an extreme cold warning there. Pardon me. In addition, we have traffic issue, and the biggest one is on Highway 1 West. So Naomi called actually just in this half hour on the commuter line and said that westbound Highway 1 is still blocked west of Eli. An involved collision has blocked both lanes all morning. People are trying to get around using the Mile Road, but there's trains running parallel to the highway, so traffic's then getting backed up there as well. So eastbound, you're still clear on number 1, but please be careful through that area. 788-3093. When we get more details, we can confirm and share. We'll share them. There's also a stalled car northbound Dunkirk in the median lane just before Fermor. Thanks, Gary, for that call. It's also causing some backups. And Jarvis, between Maine and Schultz, still closed.
Today on Q with Tom Power.
These are their stories.
Karen Robinson is one of the stars of the new series Law & Order Toronto Criminal Intent. Karen will tell you what changes when you get cast in Law & Order. For instance, your dad understands what you do, and about starting out acting in Drumheller, Alberta. That's coming up on Q, followed by Commotion with Elamine Abdelmahmoud on CBC Radio 1, the CBC Listen app, and everywhere you get your podcasts.
The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
It is a familiar story for many Canadians. Health journalist Elizabeth Payne's father went to hospital after a fall that led to a cascade of other health issues. He died the next year. How to fix the healthcare system for seniors, coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. A public funeral for Alexei Navalny is scheduled for the end of this week. The Russian opposition leader died at an Arctic penal colony on February 16. His supporters, along with many Western leaders, hold the Kremlin directly responsible for his death, and so does his widow. Yulia Navalny addressed the EU Parliament in Strasbourg, France earlier this morning. Bar Stewart has more on her message.
And Putin must answer for everything he has done to Alexei.
Yulia Navalnaya made an emotional appeal to the European Parliament, saying Russia's president should not only be held accountable for her husband's death, but for the war he's waged in Ukraine and for what he's done to Russia. She says a public funeral is planned for Alexei Navalny on Friday afternoon in Moscow.
And I'm not sure yet whether it will be peaceful or whether police will arrest those who have come to say goodbye to my husband.
Navalny will be buried a short time later. His allies said they struggled to find a place to hold a service because owners would refuse as soon as they heard the name Navalny. They've also accused President Vladimir Putin of having him killed because U.S. and German officials had suggested that he be freed as part of a prisoner swap. There's been no official confirmation of those claims.
He represented hope.
Roberta Metsola is the president of the European Parliament, which she says is united in condemning Navalny's death.
It is a crime that deserves an international and independent investigation. The world is owed justice.
Navalnaya went on to urge lawmakers to do more to hurt Putin's power by targeting Russian money that has been stashed in banks abroad. She also said that European countries should be helping the tens of millions of Russians who are against the war and against Putin, some of whom fled the country in the past 2 years. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
Volodymyr Zelensky is in Albania today for a security summit with leaders from Southeast Europe. The Ukrainian president is trying to rally international support as the Russian invasion enters its third year. Peace and security in Ukraine are topping the agenda. But Zelensky is also looking for defense cooperation that will see the co-production of weapons.
Every nation can succeed in defense when different nations cooperate and people are motivated enough to be resilient.
As support for Ukraine falters in the U.S., Kyiv has been losing ground to Russia along the front lines. Donald Trump and Joe Biden have both won their party's presidential primary in Michigan. But for Biden, the results were mixed. Tens of thousands of Arab Americans marked their ballots uncommitted. They withdrew their support for Biden over his stance on the crisis in Gaza. The CBC's Richard Madden is in Washington. And Richard, what does this mean for Joe Biden?
Well, the good news for Biden is he easily won his primary, but Democratic voters also gave him a loud and clear warning sign. They're not happy with his handling of the Israel-Hamas war and his refusal to support a ceasefire. Now, at this point, an estimated 30,000 Democrats, or 3% overall, voted uncommitted, basically a protest vote and a message they don't want him on the ballot. Now, organizers of the uncommitted movement say the results surpassed their expectations. They insist they're not looking to dump Biden, but pressure top Democrats to prioritize an end to the war. Take a listen to State Representative Abraham Ayash, who was part of that campaign.
Voters came out with a lot of enthusiasm, with that commitment. Now the question has to be to President Biden and his campaign, what will they do to heed the call of these people that have come out and said, we are a pro-peace, anti-war movement that wants our leaders to be better.
Now, it's worth noting Trump won Michigan by a razor-thin 10,000 votes in 2016. Biden flipped it in 2020. So Democrats can't afford to lose many more detractors or for their fellow Democrats to simply stay home in November.
On the Republican side, this is the fifth straight loss for Donald Trump's last remaining rival. What does this result mean in Michigan for Nikki Haley?
Yeah, in a nutshell, Nikki Haley is running out of time and a path to victory. Trump is nearly a lock to seal the Republican presidential nomination. But Haley also says the results overall show between 30 to 40% of Republicans don't support Trump, saying he may win the nomination but not the general. That's why she plans to stay in the race until at least Super Tuesday or until she runs out of cash.
All right. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
The CBC's Richard Madden in Washington. Despite spending billions of dollars on incentives, South Korea's fertility rate has hit a new record low.
2023년 출생아 수는 23만 명으로 전년보다 1만 9,200명이 줄어.
An official with Statistics Korea saying the number of newborns in 2023 was down nearly 8% from the year before. South Korea already had the world's lowest fertility rate. This is the fourth year in a row that the country's population has declined. Concerns are growing for the country's economy and pensions, given the aging population. Projections show in 50 years, South Korea's working age group will have decreased by half. By that time, nearly half of the population will be over the age of 65. The South Korean government says reversing the falling birth rate is a national priority. A Manitoba court judge has given animal welfare advocates the green light to privately prosecute a live horse exporter in the province. The ruling is believed to be the first in relation to farmed animals. Canada is among the leading exporters of live horses in the world. They are bred specifically for human consumption. As Karen Pauls tells us, it is an industry worth tens of millions of dollars a year.
And then they'll be crated inside the cargo building with 3 to 4 other horses.
Dana Tong of Manitoba Animal Save says in December 2022, she documented 79 horses on the tarmac at the Winnipeg airport awaiting a cargo plane to Japan, where their meat, served raw, is a delicacy.
It's a very stressful time for them.
Weather delays meant that flight exceeded the 28-hour limit for transporting live animals without food, water, or rest. Animal rights activists filed a complaint with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, which acknowledged the breach but said there would be no penalty. Tuesday, a Manitoba court judge gave Caitlin Mitchell and the nonprofit group Animal Justice the right to charge Manitoba's Carlisle Farms in a private prosecution for failing to have a contingency plan to respond to unforeseen delays that could result in the suffering of an animal.
The least that we can do is to make sure that what few laws we do have are actually enforced.
Lyle Lumax is the exporter. He defends the decision.
It's going to take way more than 3 hours to put them back in the trucks, and then 5.5 hours home. Everybody there said, oh, this is far, far less problem for the horses.
Live exports are banned in the United States and Britain. In 2021, Canada's Prime Minister vowed to end exports of live horses for slaughter. There's a private member's bill before Parliament now. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
New Brunswick is hoping a new approach to home construction will help solve the province's housing shortage. Like most provinces, New Brunswick is seeing demand outstrip supply. A provincial report says 6,000 new homes are needed every year. As Alexander Silberman reports, large-scale modular construction could be the key to affordable housing.
Entire homes are under construction inside a house factory just north of Moncton in New Brunswick. Wall by wall, they take shape quickly before being loaded onto trucks for delivery. Provincial Housing Minister Jill Green says modular construction could be key to addressing the housing shortage. More than 10,000 households are waiting for public housing, a list that has doubled over the past 4 years.
We'll be seeing duplexes and triplexes and full developments made with modular housing as well.
The province hopes existing manufacturers, which primarily build mini homes, will pivot to also build apartments. It plans to build nearly 200 public housing units this summer, with more than half modular.
A 10-unit building, and you'll have different modular units that all get put together like Lego.
The biggest advantage is speed. Brandon Searle leads the Off-Site Construction Research Center at the University of New Brunswick.
Now in modular, you're able to do the first, second, and third floor in parallel to the civil work being done.
The construction industry says modular on a large scale is a major change, and the supply chain needs to catch up. But the growing demand and funding from government could convince them to adapt. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Fredericton.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, everyone. It is cold in Winnipeg, big blue sky, and minus 21. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, or on the CBC Listen app. Thank you all for joining us, making us part of your day. Maybe you're wrapping up the kids' faces this morning as they get off to school. We do have lots of exhaust fog. If you're up in Thompson this morning, Nelson, Lynn Lake, Tadouli, Gillam, Shamattawa, it is even colder. There's an extreme cold warning up there. It's minus 42 in Thompson right now. This half hour on the program, we're going to continue talking about the Winnipeg Jets. Gary Bettman in town yesterday. Lots was said by Gary Bettman, by the ownership team, group rather. However, what do you have to say? What do Jets ticket holders have to say? We're going to talk to a season ticket holder who stopped buying the tickets for the season. We're going to find out why. We'll also find out what she made of yesterday's announcements, and we'll revisit what has been happening with the Jets. Of course, on the ice, they're having a great year, but in the stands, as we've been sharing, the attendance rather tells a different story. So the average attendance for a home game is 13,000. Revenues flagging, and revenues have been lagging. I'm going to stop talking now and let Heather Wells pick it up. Heather Wells, good morning. It's 8:11. What do you know about headlines?
Well, we're going to hear more about that CBC News investigation that has found some staff at for-profit homes housing children in care were giving cannabis to underage youth. Now the province says it's pulling kids from their care. We're going to hear from Manitoba's Families Minister coming up. And Manitoba's dry winter is not what one southern city has been hoping for. Morden is already in a moderate drought. According to its city plan, people and businesses have been asked to voluntarily conserve water whenever possible. We'll hear from Morden's mayor in our next news at 8:30.
Do you want to stay? I'm not sure I've recovered and I can speak.
Are you okay?
All right, mouth frozen. Abby, the forecast.
Yeah, mouth frozen, of course. Minus 21 degrees in the city. We'll see lots of sunshine today with winds, and then the high will get to minus minus 17 degrees. There's a risk of frostbite, so bundle up. Despite that sunshine, we will be feeling like minus 37 this morning all through the lunch break period. So just ensure you're all bundled up and limit exposure to the cold. For folks in the north, that we've been talking about it all morning, an extreme cold warning has been issued for northern Manitoba all the way from Thompson down to Shamattawa. There's going to be prolonged and extreme cold wind chills resulting from extreme chill values of minus 45 and colder. It's going to be even happening all through today. It will go mild a bit and then it will return overnight for folks up and north. So it's crucial to be prepared for these frigid conditions. Brandon is at minus 27, Gimli 26, Steinberg 22.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Minus 22, of course, that's implied in this weather day like this. Let's get into what's going on in traffic. Still issues on the highway, Corey, right?
That's right. All morning, Highway number 1 westbound, just west of Eli, has been closed off to traffic because of an involved collision. We don't know much details about the collision itself, but we do know from callers that it is blocked entirely. Westbound Highway 1, just west of Eli. Folks are able to get around on the Mile Road, but the thing is there's train tracks that run parallel to the highway, and trains have been going through there, and that's holding up traffic as folks try to take the mile roads to get around. Eastbound traffic is looking okay. You can still get by. But yeah, as recently as about 10 minutes ago, I heard from Naomi that it still is blocked on westbound Highway 1, just west of Eli. Here in the city, heard from both Gary and Andrew, Dunkirk, just before Fernborn, northbound Dunkirk, a stalled car is blocking the median lane. That's causing some mild backups. People are kind of used to going slow in that area these days due to construction. As well, St. Vital Import called to say northbound Main Street in the middle lane, just on the Main Street Bridge there, just before it becomes St. Mary's, there is a stalled car in the middle lane. So look out for that. That's causing some backups as well. If you see anything else going on out there on the roads, on the highways, give me an update, and I'll let folks know what you're seeing out there. The number 204-788-3093.
Well, remember back in 2011 when the Jets returned to Winnipeg and the city was jubilant? Lucky lottery winners had the chance to buy season tickets. They sold out in 13 minutes. Well, here we are in 2024 and season ticket sales have dropped to less than 10,000. Revenues are down. Fans are not filling all the seats. Why are season ticket holders no longer holding what were once seen as the golden tickets? CBC Winnipeg asked high school teacher Steve Taylor, who was one of the lucky ones back in 2011, but then gave up his tickets last year.
It was getting more difficult to get rid of tickets that we may have had that we didn't need or we couldn't use. Also, priorities kind of shifted through the global pandemic. It sort of reprioritized where money was being put and where it was being spent. And there was waning interest with a couple of members in my group specifically. And it was sort of a thing where if we didn't have all of us, we didn't have any of us. Through the years, the experience that I had as a season ticket holder, every single year, the cost of everything went up. The cost of tickets went up every single year. The cost of being at the game went up every single year. And in the time that things were increasing in price, there were always more regulations and rules being put in every single year, which sort of, we'll say, diminished the social fun aspect of the game. Getting into the game became more of a process. The installation of the metal detectors. Then it was something like, okay, nobody is allowed outside of the arena between periods anymore. But part of going to the game was experiencing kind of downtown, the whole kind of close area throughout the game, before the game, during the game, after the game, maybe connecting with people who couldn't get tickets to the game, so go and meet them quickly between periods, go outside and socialize with other people at the game. I don't know, it didn't feel as social, we'll say. We were known as a fan base to be feared. We were loud, we were boisterous, we had these amazing chants. I mean, to me, that should have been something that should have been celebrated and continued and fostered in the group. But it seemed like it diminished more and more over time. They have put out surveys every single year asking people for feedback. So they know what people are looking for, what they want. And over the years, feeling less and less respected as an individual or as a group, that were contributing thousands of our hard-earned dollars to this team, we felt in the end that we weren't being as valued as we were maybe in the beginning.
So that was Steve Taylor, former Jets season ticket holder who gave up his tickets last year. Now, last night, as we've been reporting, NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman was in Winnipeg responding to reporter questions. Bettman reassured that the team is not in danger of leaving Winnipeg, but did say that ticket sales are a key factor to the financial health of the Jets in the future. When asked what message he has for fans who are worried about the possibility of losing the team again, just so we hear it from him, here's what he said.
It doesn't matter how we got here. Okay, some people say people don't like to come downtown at night. Some people say the team's performance should have been better, even though it's been pretty darn good. Some people say the season ticket drive initially was no good. Some people say it was the pandemic. All our clubs have dealt with the pandemic, and it may have impacted some markets more than others. But again, we are where we are. So we focus on the fact that we believe in this market. Ownership believes in this market. This is a strong organization that will do what it needs to do to adjust, and I believe this community will adjust.
So what's your final message then to fans who are, have had some anxiety over the last 72 hours, and when do we get the draft here?
Get over your anxiety and come to games.
That was NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman. CBC requested to have Mark Chipman on our program, and that request was declined late last week. Now, Sarah Braga also held season tickets since the very first season the Jets came back to Winnipeg in 2011. And like Steve Taylor, who we heard from just now, she gave up her tickets last year. Good morning.
Good morning. So
what was your reaction? I'm curious to hearing NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman last night.
I'm honestly pleasantly surprised. Usually he's a lot more negative. So he was actually kind of positive about Winnipeg and the market and that kind of thing. I mean, I think it's a little, him to just say, well, just come to games. I mean, I think he missed the mark on the biggest reason why people aren't coming to the games, and it's cost.
So take me inside that for your own decision a little bit, Sarah. Costs and what other factors went into your decision to give up your season tickets?
Yeah, so I mean, I like Steve, I got them in 2011, and it was like, one of the greatest days ever when we got those tickets. And again, like he said, costs continue to rise every single year, whether it was parking, whether it was concessions, whether it was, just ticket prices. Same thing at the beginning, we were able to get rid of those tickets, no problem. People would buy the tickets up just like that, because 40 games a season, I mean, that's a lot, or 41 or 42, whatever it ended up being, and so you're trying to, sell the tickets off a little bit too sometimes, because you just can't make it to everything. My family life changed. I mean, my kids are 10, 8, and 16 months. So obviously I have a lot on the go activities. I have to go to their hockey, their swimming, their baseball, all of that, and pay for all of that. And so, my life changed. And I think, the pandemic did change things too, because it just got really easy to sit at home on my couch and watch the game on my big screen with my bag of microwave popcorn that cost me $1 rather than, my bag of popcorn at the concession that cost me, I can't even remember what the last time I was there the price was, $12, let's say, or $12 for a beer, right? So, got used to maybe being at home a little bit more too. So I think all of those things combined have just made it less sort of desirable to go downtown and go to a game.
What about when you were at the games, the home game experience? Mm-hmm. Did that change for you over the years as well, the sort of experience of going downtown and going to a game? And Steve was mentioning not being able to go outside between periods, and that was something that was important for him.
Yeah, no, I think that all really changed. And I agreed with his comments too about somehow the social aspect changed. And I can't pinpoint it. Maybe it is the fact that, you couldn't go outside and you couldn't, run across the street and grab a beer at another place or that kind of thing. But it did feel like the best part about it was the atmosphere and the vibe and the buzz, and, you're getting to know the people next to you that we're also season ticket holders, and I even noticed the people that we sat with over the years started to come less and less of that camaraderie, and it all just it all just kind of went away. And for a while there, after I believe it was the 2018 Cup run, obviously that was a huge momentum swing, and I was all in. And then after that, something started to kind of change things, whether it was the team atmosphere, we lost Patrick Laine, all of those things kind of contributed to that as well too. And so, yeah.
So if we get down to it, I mean, this is maybe too simple of a question, Sarah, but if everything else stayed the same, I mean, everything we're talking about that is a concern, but the cost went down, do you think you'd buy season tickets again?
I would say for me, no. And the reason is my life. I mean, my life situation, my personal changes would never allow for it. I can't even make it to a quarter season right now. You know, when I first bought those tickets, my first son was born in 2013, right?
So I bought those tickets.
Stuff. Yeah, 2011. The first couple of years, it was like woohoo, party time. I could go as much as I want, right? I can't justify the cost out of the pocket of my family, right? Like it just doesn't make any sense at all.
How much was it for a whole season? What were you paying in the last season before you gave up the tickets?
Yeah, so it was pushing $11,000 for P3 seats for 2 seats.
And P3 is what? Just so people, if they haven't been.
From what I understand, it's like P1 is the most expensive, P2 is the, and it goes down from there as far as what they categorize the price levels.
Yep.
And we were also, the last few years, we were also sharing those tickets. So we did find a share partner through their service, and we were doing half a season. So even at that, I mean, our family's cost was over $5,000
over $5,000
for the year. Yeah.
Now, Mark Chipman, as you know, has been calling former season ticket holders, asking them to come back. Gary Bettman saying, get over your anxiety, come back to the games, which you already addressed your reaction to that. What do you think that is perhaps key to getting people back in seats again at the Jets games?
That's a great question, and I don't know that I have the answer for that. I think that people's, situations have changed as well. I don't think, I think even the price of groceries affects people's decision making on this too. I know for me, every time I go to the grocery store, it's an extra $50 to $100.
Easy.
So, I think all of that, right? Everybody is looking at this going, and I don't think we're a Toronto market where we have, because I've been to a game in Toronto. I've been to ACC, and I've seen the corporate people filling the seats. You can tell these are big business owners and big business members. I mean, maybe that's the way we have to go in Winnipeg. We have to attract more of those people that have a little bit more disposable income. I don't think the average middle class family is going to be the people that are going to put butts in seats right now. Not until either the price of groceries goes down or something changes.
The economy changes.
The economy changes, because I think Winnipeg gets, we are a small market. We are going to get affected by that more so than maybe a Toronto, Vancouver, type place.
Sarah Braga, thank you so much for weighing in. Appreciate it. I hope your kids' team's doing well on the ice like the Jets are.
We got a playoff game on Saturday, we're hoping for a win, yeah.
Good luck. You take care.
All right. Thank you so much. Take care, Marcy.
'Tis the time of year for the kids too, right? Sarah Braga, former Winnipeg Jets season ticket holder. If you want to weigh in on this, 788-3205.
Ever hear a really good radio show and fall in love right away? Fall in love at first listen with the CBC Listen app. Find CBC radio shows like As It Happens and Now or Never and stream them anytime, anywhere for free. Download CBC Listen today.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Well, at 8:26, Bill Nye was on the show just before 8 o'clock this morning, or rather, right after 7 o'clock, he was on with us. And we told you that he's coming to Winnipeg on Sunday with his live show, which is based on a series he did called The End Is Nigh, looking at climate change. And we asked you to write in about science experiments for a chance to win tickets. So here's some of the comments. Corey's popped in to help us through.
Yeah, here's one that pretty risky, but it seems sweet. Arlo, it says you coat your arms in water, then grab bubbles in your hand. This is don't try this at home, kids.
Yes.
Then the teacher sets the bubbles on fire. The water protects your hands, and you don't feel anything. It amazes me every single time.
Okay, I regret that we shared that. I hope. I hope
I put the disclaimer.
tries this.
Exactly.
Sheila Atchison said, my favorite high school class experiment was the classic egg drop. You know that one. You're given an egg, throw it off the top of the school, and you have to make something that'll save it. Popsicle sticks, bubble wrap, cardboard, and you try to protect it. So the kids with the unbroken egg at the end, quote unquote, won. She loves seeing all of that. I did that off of Donwood School in good old North Kildonan back in the day. It's always so fun when you see your egg, and if it doesn't break, it's exciting.
Mine always broke. But we got a call from, or if we hear from Teresa, this is kind of a science experiment, sort of. It's biology, maybe. So she says, our science teacher was giving away the white lab rats he had brought in for a science lesson. I volunteered to take one home as a pet. I did not clear this with my family. Anyway, my mother did agree to let me keep it on the condition that I rehome my cat. I raised the rat in a terrarium in our basement. It got really, really fat from all the sunflower seeds I fed it. Eventually, I decided to give it away and ended up taking it to a pet store. The store owner didn't want it, but I pleaded and she relented.
Wow.
I guess that's like sounds like Teresa learned something there at least.
The poor cat.
I know.
It's like, sorry, you're out.
By a rat, no less.
Brought this rat home.
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear that every day.
No.
Ben Jimenez says in high school physics class on electricity, our teacher made us all line up around the room and hold hands. And then he used a handheld generator to send a bolt down the daisy chain. His enthusiasm for science, much like Bill Nye's, installed in me a passion for science that lives to this day. Thanks for writing to us, Ben.
Also a don't try this at home disclaimer on that one.
Yep.
Also, Christina, finally here, she says, I'll always have the fondest memories of working on the science fairs with my dad, a former science teacher. I remember one year doing a project on acid rain, and we went all around the city testing levels to get a sense of whether Winnipeg should be concerned on this front. I won bronze in the provincial science fair for the work. It was lots of fun. That's a great experiment. That's lovely.
So did your egg really always break?
Oh yeah, I was awful at it.
My worst one was I cleaned him up with a marble shooter. It was like a pendulum thing, and you pulled the hit part back. See, look at me, the hit part, very technical, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, you pulled the mallet back to sort of hit the marble. Like no one needs this in their life. Worst experiment
ever. That's the
ever.
fun part about science. You just do it to find out.
The stories are good too. So listen, we are going to close the contest in 7 minutes. End of the show. That's all you got to win tickets to Bill Nye the Science Guy. Email about your favorite science experiments of yesteryear or the one you're working on now to win@cbc.ca. Win@cbc.ca. We'll make a random draw of all of those entries, and we will let you know off air who won, and we'll announce it on the air tomorrow as well. Thanks, everybody, for the great stories. In traffic, I just want to mention this before our news here, that we do still have that issue on Highway number 1 west of Eli, and you're going to have to turn off because it's still shut down there west going due to an accident where we still don't have a lot of details we can confirm for you on air, but it has been ongoing throughout most of the morning. So please avoid that. 788-3093, and the news is next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 8:30, it's sunny, minus 21. We've been frozen at that temperature all morning in downtown Winnipeg. We will warm up a bit to minus 17 today, much warmer tomorrow. The province is moving away from a for-profit company that had been housing children in care after it was revealed workers were giving teens cannabis without a prescription. CBC I-Team's Caroline Bargout reports.
Some former staff and current workers say teens living in Spirit Rising House homes get a choice. They could collect their weekly allowance or forego it to get a gram of cannabis a day. The province says once it heard about that, it decided to end its relationship with the for-profit company. Spirit Rising House operates 9 foster homes and 2 specialized group homes for level 5 kids in care. Those are youth who have the highest, most complex needs, many of whom have addictions issues. Through his lawyer, one of the owners of the homes told CBC News cannabis was used as a harm reduction method to keep youth from taking harder drugs like meth. It's not clear when the province will find new placements for the kids. The Winnipeg Police Child Abuse Unit is investigating. Caroline Bargout, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And you can read more on this story on our website this morning, cbc.ca/Manitoba. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman says Winnipeg is a strong NHL city. Speaking before last night's Jets game, Bettman says he met with several local groups to answer questions about the NHL in Winnipeg.
Obviously, the attendance needs to improve, but it will. I have a confidence in the organization, and as importantly, I have confidence in this community.
Bettman doesn't view the dip in Jets season's ticket holders as a crisis. Now, Jets fans reacting to the commissioner's address. Ian Moffat remembers when the previous Jets left Winnipeg in 1996. He's not worried about losing this version of the team.
I was about 10 years old when the Jets left the first time, and I was devastated. I have a great time every time I come. I come to lots of games every year, and I will continue to come. And maybe I'll buy into a season ticket package, but I think they're safe.
Commissioner Bettman says the Jets ownership has made extraordinary commitments to the Jets, the arena, and downtown Winnipeg, involving hundreds of millions of dollars. Fire crews are still pouring water on a stubborn blaze on Jarvis at King Street. They arrived around 8 last night to heavy smoke and flames in the 3-story warehouse, and we are now learning the fire actually started at Speedy Glass right next door and then spread to the warehouse, which was once the former Imperial Soap building. No one's been hurt. The city says damage to both buildings is so extensive both buildings will have to be demolished. Jarvis remains closed between Main and Derby, and crews expect to be on the scene there throughout the day. The city of Morden says it needs more funding from other levels of government if it's going to weather the effects of climate change. Mayor Nancy Penner says the city's reservoir is running low after a dry winter. She says Morden has already declared a moderate drought and has asked people and businesses to voluntarily conserve water.
We are short on water, so we are currently sourcing more water supply, whether we build another reservoir to supplement our current supply. We are maxed out.
Penner says a new water plant would cost more than $100 million. Manitoba Climate Change Minister Tracy Schmidt says the situation in Morden is serious, and her department has been in talks with the city. Manitoba's public insurer is suing Ford over 8 vehicles destroyed by block heater fires. The lawsuit says those fires happened between March 2022 and April 2023. Manitoba Public Insurance says the block heaters were plugged into an appropriate power source when they caught fire. It alleges the block heaters were defective and that Ford should have properly tested them. The lawsuit asks for more than $250,000, the amount MPI paid out to the owners of the vehicles. None of the allegations have been proven in court. For find more news updated throughout the day, just head to our website, cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thank you very much, Heather Wells.
You're welcome.
Thanks to our news department, Heather Wells, Megan Ketchison, who was out in the cold this morning, and also Joni Nicolo. So I'm going to read our traffic here. Actually, we'll go to Abby first for weather, and then I'll get through some of these traffic things.
Currently chilling, Winnipeg minus 21 degrees. We're going to see sunny day. It feels like minus 37 outside, and we're looking at a high of minus 17. Don't forget about the cold warning in northern Manitoba. That's something you need to take care of because we have a cold snap across the province.
Thank you, Abby. So now let's get to the traffic here. So westbound Highway 1 has been the big one. This is west of Eli, and I apologize because we were picking up our traffic line, and then we had different information, but RCMP have confirmed now some detail here for us. So this was all due to a semi-catching fire, happened about 4:20 a.m. The driver and passenger were taken to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries, and the scene was fully cleared at about 7:20 this morning. So you're fine going through there, and if you're driving, you probably know this, but just to be clear here. Also, in the city, though, we still have some things ongoing. Narin and Panet, there has been a collision. Eastbound curb and median lanes are blocked. Southbound median lane blocked. Also, Jarvis, where Megan was for that fire that happened last night, it's closed between Main and Schultz. I think that is still closed for you there. And in Dunkirk, there's a stalled car northbound before Fermor in the median lane. So we're leaving you with a couple issues in traffic. Hopefully you have a good rest of your morning drive and rest of your day. And thank you for listening and making us part of your morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks to our live crew, Corey Funk, Abby Adeyemi, and Brad Lillies. Thank you, guys. Thanks to our hardworking team of associate producers and our leaders in unit, Leif Larson and Nellie Gonzalez. Take care and be well, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We'll talk to you again tomorrow right here on CBC's Information Radio. See ya.